anniversary, 9th anniversary. It is this day in 2011 we started this, and rain or shine. I say that because last year we had severe rain around this time, and even year before. Now the monsoon is yet to set, I think. So rain or shine, we have this program, the Sustainable Chennai Forum anniversary, coinciding with some good theme and taking some actionable points. And with the UN Habitat, we started this Urban Thinkers Campus 4 years back. And today we are here. I think this is the fifth program, if you include one program in between when we did for COVID. So this topic is of relevance to everyone, and more so for Chennai, which had been put to test on many resilience factors in the recent past. So I would stop here. I would request all the participants to probably post your questions in the Q&A box and mute all your audio, video. And I would now request Mr. Srivatsram, President, Madras Chamber, and MD, Wheels India, to give a welcome remarks.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this conference on making Chennai a climate smart city. It gives me great pleasure in welcoming Mr. Raj Cherubal, CEO of Chennai Smart Cities Limited, Ms. Christine Auclair, who is the Chief Private Sector Unit, United Nations Human Settlements Program, the UN Habitat, and Mr. Hitesh Vaidya, who's the Director of the National Institute of Urban Affairs at Delhi. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for taking your time to join us. As many of you are aware, Madras Chamber is in its 185th year of service to trade and industry in the city. And realizing that sustainable development was at the core of what businesses should do, the Chamber launched the Sustainable Chennai Forum in November of 2011 during our 175th year. The objective here was to assist businesses build a case for sustainable development and evolve a policy for an action-oriented environment for all-round sustainable development of the Chennai metropolitan area in collaboration with other like-minded institutions. Our focus was on energy, waste management, transportation, and urban greening. The idea was initially to focus on Chennai and then replicate it in other cities of Tamil Nadu. I'm proud to tell you that our initiative in the Sustainable Chennai Forum earned us a coveted Responsible Business Membership Organization award instituted by the Foundation of MSME Clusters and supported by the Ministry of MSME. Today, we are actually conducting, as Saraswati said, our 9th Sustainable Chennai Forum on making Chennai a climate smart city as part of our Urban Thinkers Campus of UN Habitat's World Urban Campaign. The World Urban Campaign is an advocacy and partnership platform aimed to raise awareness about positive urban changes in order to achieve green, productive, safe, healthy, and inclusive, well-planned cities. This Urban Thinkers Campus is a consensus-building process and a platform for bringing together city partners, stakeholders, to implement a new urban agenda for the cities that we need. The Chamber won the bid to host the conference for the year 2017, and for the first time, we organized a conference on Chennai as a global city. We followed it with conferences on the roadmap to zero waste in Chennai, making Chennai water positive in the last 2 years. So this is our fourth UTC that we're having. The Government of India's commitment to address complex issues contributing to climate change has evolved from a participatory role to a leadership role. Climate change and the associated challenges have been addressed at the national level by the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change, Ministry of Earth Sciences, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, the National Disaster Management Authority, National Institute of Disaster Management, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, and the Climate Centers for Cities at the National Institute of Urban Affairs, who are our knowledge partner. Well, it's well known that the climate changes will be experienced by cities and communities where proper safeguards have not been established. And we've had experiences in Indian cities across various seasons which have exposed the lack of physical and social resilience in our cities. It's now a time for us to translate the nationally agreed and adopted strategies to area-specific place-based resilience strategies for individual cities. Chennai also happens to be one of the smart cities under the Government of India Smart City Mission. It's one of the cities which, under the recently concluded 100 Resilient Cities initiative of the Rockefeller Foundation, Chennai was selected. However, we have always had an experience in Chennai, as all of you know, of trying to battle coming back to normal life after every monsoon and then dealing with shortage of water in periods of the summer. So we need to do some kind of structured dialogue with the key stakeholders and find ways in which we can make these changes in climate easier for our citizens to manage and deal with as these changes take place. And Mr. Raj Cherubal will elaborate more on this aspect in his address. The state government also is working on a draft action plan on climate change, looking at the next 10 years. And I'm sure that our Urban Thinkers Campus could give some suggestions and action points from our deliberations over the next 2 days to the state government as they look at framing their policy. A lot of focus has gone into structuring this conference into making Chennai climate smart. We've chosen speakers not only from the city, but also across the country and also international speakers. I'm sure that the sessions will be educational and thought-provoking. And I hope that we can come at some outcomes from this 2-day seminar for government, businesses, and communities and associations, and for all the citizens of our country. As Barack Obama said, we're the first generation to feel the impact of climate change and probably the last generation that can actually do something about it. So it's time for us to protect and hand over a better world to our children. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you to the conference.
Thank you, President. And we have two experts from UN Habitat, one with the present hat and one with the past hat. And I would first request Ms. Christine Eclair. She is actually the head of advocacy and campaign unit for external policies, strategy, knowledge, and innovation, UN Habitat, Nairobi, Kenya. I don't know whether she would have been cursing me for putting so much pressure for her to join today. And one weakness with her, I know, because she has a soft corner for Chennai. She had been here. Her PhD was on Chennai in 1993. I don't know whether she remembers. I have interacted with you during those times. If I remember it, you were also part of IFMR working on something. So that point probably I used to pull her in. So I would request Christine to say a few words.
Thank you. Sarasvati. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. From the National Institute of Urban Affairs and Raj Cherubal from the Chennai Smart Cities. Congratulations for this event. I'm very honored to join you in this campus today. As you know, and as you said, Sarasvati, I've been a student in Chennai in the 90s, where I did a PhD on housing and as a French scholar. And I indeed remembered walking in the flooded street of Chennai in areas like Triplicane. I remember people had a hard time. And I know it was just the premise of bigger floods, such as the 2015 floods when Chennai was also one of the hottest cities in the world. So, as you know, for the United Nations, climate action has become our biggest battle. We know that the temperature should not go beyond 1.5 degree increase from the pre-industrial levels. However, the Paris Agreement said 2 degrees Celsius. Scientists have made the calculation and they say, no, we should keep 1.5 degrees as the absolute threshold. You know that you are suffering in Chennai, and but now we are entering the implementation of the Paris Agreement. So 2021 will be a very important year. We have the Adaptation Summit in January, and this will require all governments to deliver their plan and take action. So they have their national determined contribution. India is in the forefront. And I've seen that the government of Tamil Nadu in February has adopted also an action plan. It's really, really good. And I see that also Chennai is also in the forefront, because it's not only about governments, it's also about local governments, the private sector, the research, the planners, the civil society. So adaptation plans are essential because they need to engage all the partners around the action plan in cities. So I would like to congratulate again for this campus, because it's exactly that. You are bringing together a set of partners who are going to work together on this particular, and I'm very happy to see the private sector is at the heart of this. Chennai Smart Cities, the Chamber of Commerce, so it's really important. And I think I would say Chennai is taking the lead in that sense in the movement of the Urban Thinkers Campus, because I think you are the first campus doing that, and you need to inspire other cities. And I will tell you that next year, 2021, the World Urban Campaign is going to focus on climate action. So you are starting ahead. You need to inspire others. We want to see the result of this campus. We need to disseminate your result, your approach. And yeah, I would like to really congratulate you. I will, myself, I have a soft, of course, because I've worked in Chennai. I've spent a lot of months in Chennai. I know it's a beautiful city. I really love the people of Tamil Nadu. So I will follow you, and I will follow you in that journey. And again, congratulations. All the best. Have a good deliberation. And over to you, Saraswati. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Christine. It's really very kind of you to have joined from Kenya. And we never knew that next urban campaign is going to be on climate change. Probably we took it because we have been discussing what should be going forward, should be the topic, and we thought this would be a very ideal subject. So love to work with UN Habitat continuously. Thanks once again. I would now turn to Mr. Hitesh Vaidya. Again, he also would have been probably been bothered by me for the last 1 week, messages, calls, and thanks for being. Only wish we had a physical. It would have been all the more a great opportunity for us to have interacted. We have had your predecessors at the first conference, and of course, you have been part of NIA, had been part of the Urban Thinkers Campus of the Madras Chamber all these years, right from the first program. Thank you for being with us. And before I invite him to give his address, let me quickly introduce him to this audience. As I said, he is currently the director of the National Institute of Urban Affairs, Delhi. He has over 20 years of experience in the field of urban management, urban governance, and capacity building. He has been involved in providing technical assistance and capacity building support to several urban local bodies and instituting significant urban reforms at various levels. He has been associated in areas of urban development, governance, urban infrastructure with UN, World Bank, US Agency for International Development, USAID, and whatnot. Poverty alleviation has been an internal component of all his assignments. Prior to joining NIA, as we mentioned earlier, he was the country representative of UN Habitat in India. Probably he is now walking the talk also. And he was intensively involved in supporting creating an ecosystem to design and roll out urban programs, including localizing SDG goals. Mr. Vaidya holds a master's degree in business development and postgraduate diploma in urban development planning and specialization in urban management from Institute of Housing and Urban Development Studies, IHS, Rotterdam, Netherlands. Over to you, Dr. Hitesh.
Thank you, Saraswati ji. Thank you, Mr. Ram. And thanks MCCI for inviting me. It's a great honor to be here and talking to you. And as Saraswati, I was trying my best from my earlier Avtara to this Avtara to get associated. And this is a chance which we got and made the, I was working on 3 conferences, but because I wanted to be with you and take this dialogue of, we all talk in our own silos, but how as a National Institute of Urban Affairs, the way it was constituted as a organization for states and cities. And I thought that this is the real, if we call it a think tank, right now, if you will agree with me, the thinking happens in the corridors of the ministry, and we are tanking that nicely or badly in the institutes like this. Sometimes we are pushing the tanks, pulling the tank, but we need to be on a driver's seat of a tank, and that's the change which I am trying to bring within this National Institute of Think Tank, relate myself that we become more valuable organization to the states, cities, and partners like at MCCI, and we become an urban Uber where we facilitate the knowledge rather than becoming another consulting organization. So that's where I'm trying to make some of changes and walking the talk, which Saraswati ji has just now talked about. So thank you for inviting. And as I this is such a great topic. Before coming to this conference, I was 5 minutes earlier. I was in a call with the Joint Secretary where we are working with the ministry on climate assessment framework, which is this time is a climate smart city assessment framework, which is happening in 126 cities. The idea, what we are trying to work out is how do you mainstream climate action at the local level? Because we all talk about climate. We all talk about the language which the climate people talk and the language which the cities talk is too different. How do you really talk the same language and understand what we mean by climate change? I think that's the big change which we need to do, because if I have been in the through my UN Habitat as well as now, the language which we are talking on the climate, the cities don't understand. Forget about Chennai and all there, and in every city we don't have Raj. So you have to think that you don't have a caliber of Raj in every city of India. So you have to talk about the language which the other people also understand. So how do you really change that discourse where they start relating themselves to climate action in their day-to-day operations? I think that's the challenge which we all need to really work on, and making our move away from this jargon approach to an approach which people can understand, they can relate to their day-to-day action. And I think climate smart city assessment framework is one area which will give up where is the benchmarks, how we should really create those roadmaps and action plans, which cities then start following it up. As my colleague Mahesh, who is on the call, and he will be talking about climate smart city assessment framework in detail. I will not get into that, but I will also talk about right now, parallelly, while you are talking about Chennai climate smart city, and my another laptop, there is urban mobility initiative, which is being launched by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, and it also is talking about climate actions. And through and the only thing is that the disruption at the city level is through a mobility angle. We really need to look at what are those disruptive forces where we need to address this climate action. And if you look at climate, but during this whole COVID, what are the key issues which cities face? And whether we talk about climate, we need to first talk about the challenges which citizens are facing. I was part of when the climate, the smart city mission was being launched, I was a part of a ministry. I was a consultant in the ministry. And I remember we had a huge discussion. What should we call smart? What should be our definition of smart? And it was a number of deliberations that how do you define the smartness? And we came to a conclusion that every city has to define its own smartness based on its unique selling point and come up with its own way of looking at it. Hindsight, I think that's a great definition because it gave that flexibility to cities to define what they want. Just not move away to the approach which everybody wants to talk about climate smart city. So I should say, how do I relate this climate within my day-to-day operations. I think that's where the challenge will be. And during this whole COVID, if we really look at it, what are the questions which citizens really struggled with? All they struggled with: how should I keep a social distance? How do I manage social distance? When I go out, because the work will not stop, but when I go out to office, how do I manage the social distance, both in the public transport, private transport? How should I? Second thing, they will, how do I use? Should I use public transport? Should I use private transport? What should be my mode of travel? Then what should we work from home? Should we go to office? Whole technology aspect, which we never knew of before 24th March, we suddenly adapted ourselves to the new technology era. And we are, as a we as a human being can really change as much as till now. And I can tell you, with the organization which I am working in, NIUA, on 24th March, when we did a lockdown, on 31st March was, how do I close the organizational account? How do I pay the salaries of the people? Those were challenges with the organization, with total Sarkari organization. It was the biggest challenge I had. And I was the first time as a director of this, it was my biggest responsibility that nobody should have, months without a salary. So how do I change my attitude, and how do we move towards? And cities are facing same issues. Then what should be the our shopping style? We should have a retail shopping or online shopping. Because while we are moving towards online shopping, the retail malls which we have created, the ACs under which they are running, what will happen to those things? So they were another consumers of energy, and how do you really manage? And whereas the online shopping, even though it is becoming every day facilitating it, it's also creating a lot of its own challenges. So we need to really address that. Second is, how do I socialize? As we all know, man is a social animal, and if I don't socialize, then I can sit on my laptop. How long? I can face the screen and go on talking. And last is, we all realized during the COVID that end of the day, it is the planning which is the biggest challenge. The way we have planned our cities. And the way we want to, we have really looked at, this fascinating that unless we start looking at the neighborhood planning, unless we look at a very small granular unit of planning, these master plans will not work, and they have no use. So these are some of the lessons, challenges which we have had. And as we did recently a survey, and also we found out that the biggest challenge the citizens during the COVID crisis across the country felt was transportation and mobility. They talked about water supply and sewerage. They talked about, third was waste and sanitation. Fourth was environmental and sustainability. Fifth was safety and security. And sixth was energy. So if you look at the hierarchy, the biggest challenge was transportation and energy. So any city which is smart has to really look at it, how focus on mobility and transportation and other issues, so to make them climate smart. And I also know that Prime Minister during the COVID thing gave three big visions. And three big visions: make it Atmanirbhar India. Second was vocal the local, and third was 5 trillion economy. And nothing can be, these are good words and good thoughts, but unless we start relating our actions on climate smart city or a practical city or a daring city, whatever way we may call it, it has to be related to these big visions. Unless people start relating themselves, or cities start relating themselves to big visions, these big visions will remain just a vision and how to do it. So, unless you look at how the climate aligns with the 5 trillion economy, what is the city has to do to become a 5 trillion economy? And that's the area where we need to really think about. And I also understand that, the top-down guidebook, there's nothing called top-down guidebook, and that won't work, because every city has to have its own unique solution. So nobody can say that do X, Y, Z, and you will get 2 X, Y, Z. So that won't happen. So you really need to work to think. And second, one-size-fit approach will not work. And last, this urban solutions, whatever we come up with on the climate issues, or we have been during the whole COVID time, we have used lot of words: daring city, resilient city, practical cities, inclusive cities. My only thing is that, one thing which this COVID has shown, and Raj is there, that it requires a daring leadership. And I think the cities have really shown during the COVID that a daring leadership, in spite of 74th Constitution Amendment, which we always will be talking about. We always will be talking about power to the cities and all. Among, looking at all their challenges, still they showed that daring leadership, that today we are sitting in front of each other and making this call happen. That itself is, I think we should give a big clap to the leadership of our cities, which has really kept us, the hopes that cities work. And I think that's all the partners which like MCSCI has kept that inspiration. I think that those are the areas where we need to really build on these relationships. So that cities does not work in isolation. The only government cannot work, only SPVs will not work. It's a partnership which will work together. And I think that has been a great learning from this COVID thing. So having said that, we all talk about new normal as if the period which we were thinking of staying was not normal, and now we move to not normal to a new normal. I think what it has really shown us that, okay, the way we were looking, and it was not giving us the exact results which we could have envisaged. We need to start thinking different ways, different disruptive, innovative thoughts to move towards the new area, whatever way we might call it, climate smart or a disruptive or whatever, we need to move away. I think that's the underlying factor, that the way we were thinking, the solutions we were moving, let's go back to the drawing board and say that why it didn't work, what can be done. I think that's the biggest lesson. And I think while we are talking about these new norms, the only four things which I think we need to really talk about is they need to be result oriented. Whatever action we need to talk about has to have some kind of a result. What are the outputs which we want to do? It has to be impact oriented. We need to have those impacts really defined. It has to be scalable. So only like a smart city mission, only area based approach will not happen. How does a whole city relate to it? So how do you scale up the pilot which you do to a larger thing? And it has to be equitable. The inclusivity has to be really taken care of, safety, security, other issues. So I think with that, I'll say that all the success to this event, and I think the biggest lesson which I learned from during the this COVID, and this is a very personal experience during the COVID, unless you involve the citizens as an equal partner in journey of Atmanirbhar or local the vocal or self 5 trillion economy, and which we saw this time, then the cities came and then they started engaging with the citizens. I think that's the biggest. How do you involve citizens towards these big visions, and they don't remain only the discussion and discourses of events, but become a movement of the citizens, and they start relating to, yes, this is what I want to do. We will not be able to achieve the desired results. So with that, thank you very much for inviting me, and congratulations for such a great topic. As I particularly see for me, as while working in the smart city mission, the smart city is only two things. When I remember the thing that how do you call something smart, and my answer to them was, when you look at a small child and he gives you a quick answer to think, you say, what a smart boy he is. And when you see a guy who is very well dressed up, nicely dressed up, you say, oh, he looks smart. So it's two-phased, the smart city. One is the responsiveness of the city towards the citizen, and that's the smartness. And second is, when I come from outside, the visual of the city, or the comfort or accessibility of the citizen in the all the cities infrastructure. I think that's the thing. So accessibility and responsiveness, I think these two are for me the criteria for smartness. There may be a crude way of speaking it, but I think unless the citizen feels he has a good infrastructure, he don't relate to smartness. And if the city does not respond to his demand, whatever you may be doing, he will not relate himself to the smartness. So with that, thank you very much for giving me time.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Hitesh Vaidya. We were fortunate to have you listen to you. As I said, hopefully next conference we are probably going to have in-person meeting. We have made note of the points. Very well said that it has to be very customized solution for every city. Build the case for Chennai to start with. So thank you so much, and we would be happy to listen to Mr. Uma Maheshwaran about the assessment pattern and where we stand or how things have to move. Thank you so very much. I would now call upon Mr. Raj Chirubal, the smart CEO, as per the definition of probably Hitesh Vaidya of the Chennai Smart City Limited. He's a good friend of mine, and he had been part of the Chambers Urban Thinkers Campus, if I remember right from the first program again. Just to give a very quick introduction, though he may not require an introduction to the audience of this nature. He is the Director Projects for Chennai City Connect earlier, and a platform for industry and civic organizations, and which envisions vibrant Indian cities that deliver world-class quality of life, infrastructure and services. Its interests are in improving urban governance, urban quality of life. He had worked on sustainable transportation, urban planning, pedestrianization, bus rapid transit systems, and integrated multimodal public transportation, solid waste management, a whole gamut of areas concerning the urban management. He holds an MS in physics from the University of Louisville and an MS in nuclear engineering from the University of Michigan. He has worked in the software industry in areas like computational physics, visualization, and telecom and finance. And currently, I know he's so passionate about this, and we are eager to listen to Raj. Please.
Thank you so much, Saraswati, Srivats, Hitesh, Christine, and others. I think this is a pretty timely event. I think the world, we are still things that I think every time somebody says COVID, the first thing they say is that if you think this is bad, climate change kicks in. So I think we are in the right time to we should be able to do something about it. And just today I was preparing for this. I just checked some other website. I realized cities are, I think, only just 3% of the. But I think the energy consumption is, I think, around 60 to 80% from what I understand. And then pollution, I mean, the carbon emission is around 70–80%. So I am a big fan of 80–20 rule, especially in India with limited resource, limited capabilities, etc. If you have to leapfrog, you have to focus on what can we do with our limited resource to achieve a big bang leapfrogging. So Hitesh made a lot of good points, so I don't have to repeat many of those things. But I have always this issue of what is smartness comes up all the time, whether it's climate or in general. What's so smart about smart city type? For me, it's always been very simple. It's about any good city. You're not worried about IoT device or camera or cloud computing and so on. People are interested. You and I, we are interested in simple things. Can you walk on the street without getting honked and polluted all the time? Or can you, when you open the tap, can you drink the water safely? Can children run around and play? So I think it's a simple idea of quality of life. For me, smartness means environment smartness, social smartness, and governance smartness. In this context of climate change, smartness to me means all our projects, all our services that city has to provide, the policy framework, etc., becomes climate friendly, taking carbon emissions, methane emissions, and so on into consideration. And it's as simple as that. So it's, to me, it's not very complicated. I think people are complicated by thinking in terms of IoT or camera or computers and supercomputer and so on. Those to me are just tools to achieve an objective. Objective is, like I said, quality of life, whether you're, and of course, socially smart in the sense of city shouldn't be just for a handful of people or simply for rich people. It has to be for everybody, irrespective of gender. So I think I can kind of proudly say that all the, in general, I think smart city mission in India, and I have access to many other projects from across the country. And surely in Chennai, I can't think of one project that is not inclusive or not for everybody. It's pretty much for anybody and everybody. It's as much as humanly possible. We have taken environment friendliness into account. So I would look at the smart city projects, or in fact many of the other projects from other departments, as building blocks. So Chennai, just to step back a bit, like Saraswati said, I've been involved in many of these kinds of events earlier. So 2-3 years ago, 4 years ago, if somebody had told me, what are we doing about smart climate change and so on, my answer would be that not much we can do because it's a central issue. Central government, environment ministry had to decide what to do, Paris Accord and so on. But amazingly, credit goes to the smart city mission that they almost overnight, they've made it into a city's responsibility also. So you no longer can we in Chennai, or whether you're in Bhubaneswar or Madurai or wherever you may be, you can't point to central Delhi and say they have to do something about it. It's not our problem. Overnight, with the climate framework, which Hitesh talked about and Mahesh will describe in detail later, overnight they have made sure that cities have to take responsibility for something that's going to affect us in a big way, and hopefully in a positive way if we do the right things. The climate framework and the responsibility that is on the cities now with respect to the climate framework and how we use it, how we move forward, is pretty profound. And even a year ago, if you had told me something like this is going to happen, I wouldn't have believed it. Today, as we speak, there are people in Smart City here who are collecting data, filling up the framework. Work is supposed to help us, guide us to not only assess where we are right now, benchmark it, but also, in my opinion, start looking at all our projects, cities projects, to see what are the consequences of that project on climate action, and how can we take up more projects that will help us in the right direction as far as climate is concerned. So that the climate framework and the responsibility given to the cities have, I think it's a game changer. I mean, it's incredible, in fact. So that is one point. The other point I would say is that there obviously in India, no matter what you take, there will be a lot of cynicism, and some of it is understandable because a lot of promises made and not very little deliverable. But I would argue, at least especially in terms of Chennai, you have to look at a lot of the Chennai's projects as building blocks. So as a city, we cannot overnight get things done. So the way I look at it is, we have the right opportunity to leapfrog. Yeah, I always bring up this example of rotary phones. When I was a kid, and many of us were kids, the only thing you knew were rotary phones, and very few people had phones in general. And then if we had followed the route of the rotary phone and the black rotary phone and so on, I suspect most of us would have never had a phone. Luckily for India, we decided to leapfrog to mobile, and from mobile, simple mobile, we ended up with smartphones. And I assume our country, our societies, rich and poor, are far better off because of that leapfrogging. With respect to climate, when climate is not an abstract thing, it is about changing the way we live, changing the way we do things, changing the way we use technology, energy, and so on. Luckily for us, we are not the only people working on this. The whole world is working. That is an advanced country like Germany or a country. A lot of activities going on. So I think with the framework in mind, we have an amazing opportunity to learn from others and hopefully teach others. And Chennai, I always point out that we have a tremendous influence on this world because just to quickly put, Chennai is the largest city in Tamil Nadu, and Tamil Nadu, I guess, is the most urbanized state, if I understand it right. India soon will be the largest country in the world in terms of population, which means what we do in Chennai actually has a resonance, it resonates across the world, good things and bad things. So with respect to climate, which is going to affect the entire globe, I think Chennai can not only learn from others, and hopefully we can teach others how to make things better. But in that context, I think we have a tremendous opportunity to leapfrog. That would be my second point. And leapfrogging also, if you look at many of the Chennai Smart City projects and other projects for that matter, we learned already a lot. So for example, whether it is parking management system, whether it is cycle sharing, whether it is pedestrian plaza, whether it is, we have actually almost done with the 210, 220 water bodies of Chennai. All these things, think of them as building blocks, which obviously either we invented it ourselves in Chennai, or most probably we learned from others, looked at what other cities have done, whether Indian city or abroad. We learn from them. We okay, this is what is good for Chennai. Let's learn from others and implement it. So to reinvent the wheel in Chennai, we can learn from others, and that's exactly what we've done. So that would be my second point. And good news is that C40, my friend Daniel, who works at C40, he's been involved in C40 for the last 2-3 years. And they already have done a benchmark of Chennai from a climate perspective, greenhouse gas mapping and so on. And what they discovered is that, and it is absolutely surprising to me, is that I think almost 2 years ago itself with the smart city projects, we have supposedly saved about 3% of emissions thanks to the smart city projects, which I'm not an expert on climate, so, but what Daniel and others pointed out was that is a huge deal when it comes to reducing emissions. So that to me shows that if we do the right kind of projects, we can be on the right track and achieve climate goals. And it doesn't have to be a Herculean task or impossible task in that sense. And I can assure you that thanks to the smart city missions way of doing things, that is, if something good happens in Chennai, they want other cities to learn. And very in that sense, same spirit, Chennai has learned a ton of things from Pune, Bangalore, all kinds of other cities in India. And that's exactly how smart city mission functions. The point is that don't waste too much time reinventing the wheel if you can learn from others. So I think leapfrogging, learning from others, teaching others, etc., has to be the way forward so that we can accelerate our projects and get to our objectives. The last good news would be that instead of sitting and saying how wonderful we are actually, as a city, scaling all these. So you may have heard something called the Mega Street Plan, which basically, put it simply, you take the success of, let's say, a pedestrian plaza, and how do we replicate it, urban forest, pedestrian plaza type concepts to about 110 kilometers of Chennai. So that's a massive project. Because of all the successes of various projects, World Bank, for the first time in India, has chosen Chennai to be the something called the Chennai, City Partnership Project. I think it's around, they're going to invest around 55,000 crores of rupees in the next few years, which is not a small amount. And when you can imagine that when World Bank and others get involved, their expectation of the standards, what kind of benchmarking we are doing, what is the thing we are going to achieve, all these things become sky high. So climate obviously is one of those things, and one of the reasons why they got so interested is because of the success of the projects, whether it's water body restoration, whether it is pedestrian plaza and so on. So I think instead of simply talking about the past, Chennai is already now leapfrogging in terms of financing and so on in a big way. So I'm assuming that in the next 2 to 3 to 4 years, we would start seeing not just T-Nagar development, but the same kind of development happening in Tundiarpet, Nungambakam, Mylapore, Adayar, Velachery, and Ananagar to start with. This is basically two verticals. One is in transport, the other one is in water. And many different projects are obviously envisioned under this whole city partnership project. And obviously, we will be using the city framework and the climate framework to assess these kinds of projects and propose to the government projects that would be climate friendly. And climate friendly automatically, in my mind, means the better quality of life, because it automatically means more walkability, more cyclability, lesser pollution, and so on. All the things that I'm sure whether you're rich or poor, you want these kinds of things in your city. So I think, like I said, we've come a long way, but we have a very long way to go. So I think the work, MCCI and other organizations like MCCI, ITDP, CARET, 100RC, C40, all the hard work that you have done and others have done in Chennai for the last many years, In fact, the frustrating part used to be that there's nothing to show for other than events and seminars. But I can assure you that these kinds of events are becoming very, very useful for the city, because many of those ideas that's getting implemented today started off in one of these events many years ago in Chennai, whether it's at MCCI or an ITDP event or a Care Earth event. So I think the civil society's the contribution cannot be underestimated. It's tremendous. So I will conclude by saying thanks to MCCI for not just this event, but for the work you have done with others, bringing people together, bringing industry, civil society and government together for these kinds of events in the past. And I know that you're working on urban freight movement and so on, which are all going to be massive pieces of the climate framework, because freight movement and the energy it consumes obviously is a major part of it. When we talk about transport, we always think in terms of people transport. But I think it's sometimes the hidden elephant in the room is the freight transport and related issues. So thank you, MCCI, and all the people who are in the event. I think all the thinking and discussion and arguments that we've had in the past on these kinds of topics are clearly becoming useful tools in designing the future of Chennai. And very importantly, like Hitesh had pointed out, MCCI and other organizations, one of the biggest contribution is that they're bringing other stakeholders into the discussion and topic. Without government and government officials and people like me and my colleagues and all can only do so much, right? We can disseminate ideas and so on through Facebook or Twitter or through these kinds of events. But when you organize these kinds of events and bring stakeholders into the discussion, that has multiplier effect. So I'm born optimistic, but I think the last 3-4 years of working as CEO of Smart City has made me even more optimistic. It's not easy, it's painful. It's a very, very difficult thing in India to get anything done, and I think all of us would agree with that. But I would end on a very, very, very optimistic note that we are on the right track, but we have a long way to go, and I hope all of us can work together and make things happen, not just in 20-year or in 30-year term, but let's think in terms of what are we going to do in 6 months, what are we going to do in 1 year, and so on, because all this is require ourselves keeping our morale up. I mean, and success, 6 months success, 3 months success, 1 year success helps add to that morale. And so let's not lose track of that. Even the climate is at least in our minds, it is a long-term problem. That's why we don't focus on it too much. Let us plan our activities in short term, medium term, and long term, so that not only can we see success on the ground, but also it helps us keep our morale high and keeps us energetic so that we can continue working towards the future. Thank you so much.
So much, Raj, for your very kind words and for your kind presence here today. As you say, we have miles to go, especially when we take the climate change agenda as such. It's a big thing. But as you rightly said, probably we have to start working on short-term goals to reach that long-term goal. I hope we have structured the program trying to cover the various aspects, and we may be able to probably at the end of the 2-day event, we'll be able to share at least some actionable points, and probably we can also start working with the government. In fact, I should mention here on the urban observatory thought process, which is going on, probably it's going a bit slow, but we are working with the NIUA as well as the smart city. Probably we can see after COVID, after all this new normal, probably what we should relook at and how we should work on this long-term agenda of the climate change. Thank you so very much. I thank all the speakers here, Mr. Raj Cherbal, Mr. Hitesh Vaidya, Ms. Christine, and all the panelists and moderators who are going to start talking now, because we have a very well-structured, packed program. So we will start with technical session 1 with Mr. Raghuttama Rao as the moderator. And we have a number of speakers. As Raj said, probably cross-learning is important. So we have tried to bring the different experience, different agencies, different stakeholders, and have thought about this session today and tomorrow. So we are extremely thankful for all these speakers. One good thing of this digital platform is now location doesn't matter. So it's fairly in a way easier, though we miss the socializing part of it. We could get wonderful speakers from across the country, from across the globe, I should say. So we will have a packed day. Thanks everyone, and thanks all the moderators and the speakers and the participants and the press. So we will break with the inaugural session now and move into the technical session one. Thanks once again, and shall we go to the technical session if Mr. Raghuttama Rao is ready, the moderator is ready.
I'm ready.
Lists are also there. I think most of them have joined. Can I invite? Yeah, I think all of them have joined, if I'm right. So can I invite Mr. Raghuttama Rao is already there, the other panelists, to be on the video audio mode, if you don't mind, so that we'll be able to at least see Mr. Uma Maheshwaran from NIUA, Ms. Jayashree Venkateswaran from CARES, Dr. Imani Kumar from ICLAN, and Ms. Vaishali Nandan. Please, all of you, can you join the virtual panel? Very quickly to introduce Mr. Raghuttama Rao, then leave it to him to introduce the other panelists and kickstart the discussion. The first session is on climate change, Indian urban outlook. And I should be honest in saying, when we thought about this topic for the UTC, Mr. Raghu will recall, I had a word with him to think what we should take up. We have been talking on water earlier. Thankfully, today, Tamil Nadu has got the water award, the best water award on the national level. We were talking about zero waste. We have talked about global city. So before even making this proposal, I had a word with Mr. Raghuttama Rao, and I should give the full credit to him. It was he who suggested that probably a good topic to take and going forward to work continuously is this. And thanks again, Raghu, for your suggestion. So we could really put together a fairly good program with your idea. Currently, Mr. Raghuttama Rao is the Chief Executive Officer of Gopalakrishnan Deshpande Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship (GDC) at IIT. He is also a General Committee member of the Madras Chamber. I'm happy to say that. Prior to this, he was the Chief Mentor of ICRA, a credit rating and analytical firm in South Asia, as you all know, and a subsidiary of Moody's. Raghu's last executive role was as Chairman and CEO of IMAX, ICRA Management Consultancy Group, and a management consulting business, which he founded as a subsidiary of ICRA. So again, he had been a pioneer in setting that up with an operating footprint in over 20 countries. He's a postgraduate diploma in management from IIM Ahmedabad and is a Bachelor of Technology in Mechanical Engineering from IIT Madras. He's a qualified management accountant, was a Fulbright scholar. Over to you, Raghu.
Thank you, Saraswati, for a very generous introduction. And for me, this is home. Chennai has been home for 30 years. Madras Chamber, I've been working for as long as I can remember. I've been in Chennai. And so along with my co-panelists, I'm blessed to have a fantastic set of speakers. So, but before I introduce them, I thought let me just, add to some of the comments that we heard in the original, in the inaugural session. So Chennai is not new to climate change. When Saraswati asked me a few months back, what should we do? My topic of research in IIT happens to be climate change. That's why, it was a no-brainer for me. And not only because I was familiar with what it involves, but I also felt that what Chennai has gone through, let's say in the last 15 years, more notably in the last 15 years, like as well many other cities and places in the country, and maybe the rest of the world as well, is kind of a rising incidences that remind us that we don't negotiate with nature. The more we start negotiating with Mother Nature, I think we are asking for trouble. I think, if we take that stance as the fundamental premise of governance and building institutions and building strategies to have safe and, shall I say, sustainable development, I think then we are in good territory. So when you have had floods in Chennai, you had droughts in Chennai, you had cyclones in Chennai, even had a tsunami of Chennai. Okay, that not be exactly due to climate change, but you really see disasters that have actually hit Chennai in the last 10 to 15 years have been quite extreme, and they put us on the disaster map in many ways. Not good news, but at the same time, it has made us very, very prepared to multitudes of multiple phases of nature, the way that she can harm us. We are actually disrespectful of her, and we don't take preparatory steps to go ahead. So, given as it may, look at it at an India level, we're the third largest emitter in the world of greenhouse gases. And so, while we're a developing country, while we have fundamental services to actually reach to a large part of our population, but we also seem to be, one of the largest polluters, because of the nature of our high population, of our large economy, and so on. So, given that we are 17% of global population and 4.5% of global, greenhouse gas emissions, climate change can hurt us very heavily. In fact, UN estimates that we could actually be hit to the extent of 2 to 3% of our GDP by 2050 if we actually don't take corrective action. So recently, the Ministry of Earth Sciences put out the first assessment, climate change assessment report. And a couple of things actually were a little disturbing to me as I read it. While it was expected that the average temperature has gone up by, let's say 0.7 degrees due to greenhouse gases, but what was troubling was the best case scenario. Well, this is a report that's there, so we have to take it at face value. The best case scenario in terms of temperature increase in India in 2099 is 2.7 degrees centigrade. Now, the Paris Accord has warned us that we shouldn't be any higher than 1.5 or at least 2. And the best case scenario that our assessment report is saying is higher than that. The only comfort I can take cynically is that we won't be around. Well, probably most of us will not be around. But that's hardly a comfort because the country is going to be in bad shape if that scenario plays out. Sea level rise in Mumbai is supposed to be about 3 centimeters per decade, going forward. And in Chennai, or let's say the eastern coast, is likely to be about 5 centimeters. Now again, given that Chennai is hardly at any, let's say we are at mean sea level. When you have high tide and you have heavy rains, God forbid, what happens? What happens in the city? We've seen it. So therefore, we really can't afford any sea level rises and so on. So, given that nature is starting to warn us, giving us time to improve, it's clearly that we should take steps. And it was really heartening to hear some of the speakers, particularly with respect to initiatives in the Chennai Smart City, the vision that the state government has put out, the Tamil Nadu Climate Change Action Plan. All of that are kind of working together. So that's good news, right? So what is it that we can do as a smart city? To be a climate smart city, I guess from some in common language would be to become more resilient, probably to reduce climate risk, maybe mitigate them, and maybe be in a better position to adapt to certain risks that you can't mitigate as well. Make the city more livable. I think we heard some talk on that. Maybe make the city more competitive. All of that. So what I take away, we are after all a chamber of commerce. So how do we play a role, in helping the government, helping the citizens, helping civil society to come about? I think that while it presents a challenge, climate change also presents several business opportunities. How do you become climate smart? It's in terms of making your buildings green, making your society energy efficient, making your transport more electricity based than fossil fuel based, making water bodies and the water cycle more sustainable, making your economy as a whole more circular and less predatory on the environment. I think all of these present a lot of opportunities in terms of new investments, in terms of new governance structures, in terms of new financial models, and all of that. So I think chambers like ours, not just a question of providing a platform to people to meet, but also in terms of rallying our members, the government, and civil society come together and build on these new opportunities. So let's kind of, without much further ado, let's get into the session where we have 4 speakers of eminence. So I'll kind of give you a one-liner of the speakers, and as they come up, I'll probably give a little bit more background. So we have, in the order of what they will speak today, we have Dr. Uma Maheshwaran Rajshekhar. He's the chair of Urban Resilience, Global Resilience City Network at NIUA, National Institute of Urban Affairs, New Delhi. Dr. Uma Maheshwaran, welcome. And the second speaker after him would be Dr. Jayashree Venkatesan, very well known to all of us at Chennai. She's the chairperson of the Earth Crust, and she will focus on the biodiversity and keeping the Chennai ecology intact. And following her, we'll have Mr. Imami Kumar, Deputy Secretary General of ICLEI. It's a global organization. He's the director of ICLEI South Asia. And he will be speaking on climate proofing of Indian cities, following which we will have Ms. Vaishali Nandan, who heads Climate Smart Cities project at GIZ India. And I understand she'll be presenting a couple of case studies. So as I invite Dr. Uma Maheshwaran, let me just spell out some housekeeping rules, just to ensure that we are on time and we respect the audience's time as well. We will have 15 minutes per speaker, and I will intervene briefly at the 12th minute mark to ensure and give you a reminder that you have another 3 minutes to finish your talk. And I request all of you to keep time so that we also have some time for a Q&A session. So with that, let me invite Dr. Uma Maheshwaran. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Rao, for a nice introduction and also setting the context for the climate change scenarios in India. May I request somebody to let me share my screen? Is that possible? Then I can take you through a small presentation. Thank you.
Yes, sir. It's been given.
Thank you. So I hope all of you are able to see my screen. And so what I'm going to present today is more on the Climate Smart City Assessment Framework, which has been developed with the support from Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. And this currently is being rolled out to more than 126 cities in India. And this assessment framework is designed in such a manner that all the Indian cities report on their status. So it's more of a self-assessment and evidence-based assessment of situation across the country. Before I get into the Climate Smart City Assessment Framework, of course, some of the things is already been indicated by the previous speakers. And why do we need climate smart cities, or why do we need cities to start looking at climate? There are two key things which are going to happen, as things progress. One, of course, the urbanization is anyway taking place, and more people are going to be in cities. Currently, we are hoping that in this census, whatever is going to be released in 2021, we will see that the overall urbanization in India is going to cross over 40%. And the second thing, along with urbanization, what we are also experiencing is not a changed climate, but what we are experiencing more is the variability. And that variability is what is leading to increased number of hot days and increased number of cyclonic activities, especially both in Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea, and also increased variation in rainfall. So what's happening is we are not seeing that percentage increase or decrease in rainfall in any one given year. In a single year, the rainfall is quite high in some of the cities, and in some of the cities, the rainfall is also quite low. And what is also happening is the number of rainy days across country is also coming down. That means that you are having few days where you get more than 100 mm of rainfall, and overall in the season, the rainfall is not evenly distributed, so on and so forth. So when these kinds of things are happening, and when we are, at the parallel front, investing on urban infrastructure through various missions, central government programs, state government programs, and also city-run programs, it's important to look at climate not as a separate element. Either it's not, the question is not whether we have to do mitigation or we have to do adaptation. What is more important is any kind of investment, what we are doing in a city, we want that investment to last longer. And we also want that investment to also take into consideration the climate aspects, the changing climate aspects. For example, if we are investing on a critical infrastructure, such as, hospitals or roads and bridges, we are looking at a time span of 50 years. And what we need to do is, it's not the question whether that particular infrastructure needs to come or not. The larger question is whether that particular infrastructure, whatever we are doing, can it take care of the future climate, and can it take into consideration these extreme events which we are experiencing over the last few decades. With that in mind, city assessment framework was developed, and the main idea is to help cities understand the current status regarding the climate actions and make efforts to improve in specific sectors, in sectors of their choice. And this not only provides a clear guidance in terms of what they need to do, but it also provides information on mainstreaming some of the actions. And the final thing is, it is also looking in terms of how, when we are undertaking an assessment at such a large scale, idea is not to limit it to these few 126 cities, but how do we take it up to 600 plus cities across the country? And in that way, we can see the overall, activities or actions getting improved, across the country. So what we have been doing is, we have been conducting various training events, and this year we have conducted over 46 trainings to these 126 cities, and more than 27 organizations are currently joined together. So this is, even though it is run by the ministry, I think this is one of the efforts where more number of partners, alliance partners, have been working with the cities and contributed to, not only in terms of the development, but also in designing some of the training materials, and also reaching out to the cities and helping them undertake these assessments. More than 27 government departments are currently supporting in various data collection. When I say 27, I'm not including the city ULBs, because there are 126 ULBs who are undertaking the assessments, and these 27 other departments, is departments such as water supply, Central Pollution Control Board, RTOs, to give data on vehicle and the type of vehicle and so on and so forth. There are more than 27 government agencies which are providing information, and 105 data inputs are being captured. So I'll quickly take you through what that means and what that is. And over 600 city officials have been trained so far in undertaking this assessment, and they are currently, providing us with information across these 5 thematic areas. The 5 thematic areas include urban planning, green cover and biodiversity, energy and green buildings, mobility and air quality, water management, and waste management. And within each of these things, for example, energy and green buildings, we are capturing how much electricity consumption is happening in the cities, and what is the total electrical energy derived from renewable sources. We are also looking in terms of the fossil fuel consumption within the city, that is in terms of petrol and in terms of CNG, in terms of other things. And energy efficient street lighting, how much of the city roads use energy efficient street lighting, and how much the city bylaws support in promoting green buildings, and how much amount of green buildings are coming up on an annual basis. And when I talk about green buildings, we are not only looking at certain rating system, we are also looking at the current Econivas Samhita, which is more for green roof and cool roof and thermally comfortable low-income housing and so on and so forth. In terms of mobility and air quality, once again, we are looking in terms of the clean technology shared vehicles, which are being promoted by the ULBs, and availability of public transportation, how much amount of public transportation is available, and how much amount of non-motorized transport network is also available in the city, especially for pedestrian and bicycle, and also level of air pollution, and what the city is doing with respect to its city air action plan. With respect to water management, we are looking in terms of the water resource management and also the non-revenue water and the wastewater recycling and also the floods and water stagnation issues which some of the cities face, and how much amount of energy efficient systems are there in water supply, and how much amount of energy efficient waste water management system does exist, and what we are doing with respect to waste, what cities are doing with respect to waste in terms of their minimization initiatives, in terms of their dry waste recovery and recycling, and also construction and demolition waste, how they are using it and recycling it, and also the extent of wet waste which gets processed, and whether we are also, cities are promoting scientific landfill and they are also operating it in an efficient manner, and what could be done to the existing landfills, whether there are scientific remediations which are being undertaken by the city. So how this framework is going to help, it's this is the second round of assessment. So we pretty much know which are the cities which are still at level 1 and where they are struggling, where they are, we call them climate warriors because they are still trying to fight the impact, from some of the temperature and precipitation changes which are taking place. All we want to do is across these 28 indicators, we want cities to pick and choose the indicators they want to work, they want to prioritize, they can projectize some of these things, and how they move from being a climate warrior to a climate champion in terms of showcasing their ability to progress systematically. And we call these things as development stage indicators. So each of the indicator which I presented before has 5 stages, and each stage indicates that the early stage, like somebody at a climate warrior, they start thinking about climate actions, they start discussing about it. The explorers are more in terms of they wanted to create coalitions, they want to create committees, they want to create a panel of experts who can come in and start doing something about it. And trendsetters are somebody who is not only thinking about doing it, but they have already started doing actions on the ground. It can be in terms of fund allocations, it can be in terms of on ground actions which can contribute to either mitigation or resilience efforts. And leaders are somebody who can come out with innovative approaches for doing the same thing, and champions are those who can actually show impact, in terms of increase in the green cover area, decrease in wastage, increase in efficiency, and so on and so forth. So of course we are providing currently the Climate Center for Cities, which is currently called C-Cube. It's situated in National Institute of Urban Affairs, and it is also being supported by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. And we are doing a lot of things to help the cities move forward with their climate assessment. And not only in terms of the climate assessment, we are also trying to help the cities progress across these indicators from year to year. And this is done not by one single institution. Of course, we have more than 45 partners who are currently with us, and some of these partners you may know, and you'll be hearing some of these partners talk during today's event. But we also have 35-member thematic committee, and this comprises of experts from across the country who have been providing inputs in terms of whether cities have the capacity to undertake such assessment, whether we are making the indicators easy, at the same time we make the indicators more relevant, and there is also a 15-member executive committee, and we have a 6-member thematic expert committee and a 12-member core team working towards making this happen. So with that, we are
Dr. Umameshwaran, you have 3 minutes more.
Sure. Thank you. We are currently providing handholding support to the cities in terms of developing toolkits and providing toolkits to them, and also providing capacity building, which is one of the key activities to help them improve. And of course, along with the alliance partner, we want to create some on-ground implementation across cities. And we are also looking in terms of data solutions and innovations, where using this huge amount of data, we can prioritize some of the programs, some of the missions, future missions, and we can create certain kind of an impact-based investments across cities. And that's where we are right now. And we are, as I indicated, we are currently working with 126 cities and helping them undertake the second round of assessment. But hopefully in the next 3 to 4 years, we want to increase the partnership from 45 to more than 100, because we need more number of people joining us and working with us in implementing climate actions across all Indian cities. With that, I'll stop. Thank you very much.
Over to you, Raghu.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Maheshwaran. Am I audible, Saraswati?
Yes, sir. You are.
So thank you very much for being in time and for your thoughts on the assessment framework. It's really impressive that you're working with 125 plus cities and so many officials being trained, and I'm sure the multiplier effect will be very high. I think all the 5 areas that you spoke about are highly logical, and I'm sure that most cities will kind of take the hints and move on very quickly. Thank you very much. We'll come back to you more in the Q&A. So let's move on to our next speaker. She is Dr. Jayashree Venkatesan, chairperson of the Air Earth Trust, and our focus, I understand, will be on keeping Chennai ecology intact. We're very eager to understand this. We know the ravages, how Chennai city is ravaged, how the biodiversity is compromised, and there's pressure both from nature as well as from people, and neglect is there all around. So we would really like to hear from you, madam. What is it that we as a city, we as business fraternity, we as civil society need to come together to ensure that our city remains Singara Chennai. Over to you, Dr. Venkatesan.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Little louder if you can.
Yeah, am I audible now, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. May I have the presentation, please?
Can you switch on your video, ma'am? Possible. That's better. Yes. Yeah.
So I'm more comfortable with audio.
Okay.
Okay, you can be a little louder, Jayashree, louder. Environment voice has to be heard strongly.
Yeah, I'll be as strong as I can. Not to worry. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. In fact, I took the liberty of changing the title from keeping Chennai's ecology intact to conserving Chennai's ecology, because that seemed more practical, doable. Please bear with me on that. And let me begin by saying that we've largely pursued a path of progress, growth, development that has been human. Million plants and animals that coexist with us on this planet, and Chennai is no exception. And all it took for us to shut down and be pushed into a state of uncertainty was one small microorganism. And the fact of the matter is we are still debating its origin, its structure, and the kind of mutations it undergoes. Now, while we are worried about this pandemic, we also need to recognize that lesser known or lesser talked about facets of climate change has been the diseases that it can bring, the kind of pandemics that it can usher in, because of the rise in temperature or intrusion of whatever havoc that climate change is set to cause. Let me contextualize all of this into Chennai, and may I have the next slide, please? Yeah, what I'm about to say is something that all of us know, that it's a coastal city along the Bay of Bengal, and it's a city, the coast is rather a problematic one, as well as the one that protects us. I deliberately used this photograph of a fiddler crab. In fact, the disappearance of a fiddler crab is a straight indication of the change in salinity and the kind of havoc that Sea has been playing on this coast of Chennai. In comparison to Arabian Sea is a warmer sea, and globally Chennai has been designated as a vulnerable hotspot along with the other coastal cities of the East Coast. This is not something that is easily said, that's easily accepted by one and all. Next slide, please. Now, historically, if you look at it, Chennai has always developed on what we call long lines. In fact, Chennai's expansion has been something that's characterized by a road laying, largely north to south or east to west, and then the habitations happen around it. And then it's also a city which is characterized as a city typified by habitat mosaics. You really don't have contiguous parcels of one kind of land or one kind of wetland. The mosaic is so finely grained that it is rather difficult to understand what characterizes Chennai and its ecology. And the third thing is it's a highly transformed city. I would rather use the word manipulated, but since it's a very august kind of a gathering, I've used a more politically accepted word called transformed. Fact of the matter is we messed up with Chennai for a very, very, very long time, and thereby resulting in a series of fragmented habitats. Any ecologist worth his salt would tell you that it's extremely difficult to intervene in fragmented habitats. Next slide, please. Farm vegetation, grass vegetation of this particular city, which is something that's actually even a novice would say that a coastal city would have this kind of a vegetation, has been compromised, and it's been replaced with a number of non-native canopy-rich arboreal plants. The vegetation cover, despite all this intervention, is very weak in terms of both choice of species as well as the kind of diversity that results from a poor choice of species. The next slide, please. This is a slide that we have used many times, essentially looking at two parameters: increase in urban area, which is essentially urban infrastructure, and the consequent impact on wetlands. And when I use the word wetlands, I don't limit it to man-made lakes and tanks, but a series of also near natural and natural systems on the coast, upper catchments, shallow marshes, freshwater, as well as saline, mangrove patches, estuaries, creeks, everything comes under the definition of wetlands. We've looked at this. In fact, this is a decadal map that's available, but I've culled out just 2 years, 1980 to 2017. The color is stark. You can see that Chennai has really concretized itself, leading to a point where the impermeable surface area has increased tremendously in Chennai. The next slide, which is a graphical representation of it, will show. I'm sorry for using the word color orange here. No hidden intentions. It's just that I couldn't select a better color. So it shows that we've had a really stark increase in area under urban infrastructure, and this is coincident with the 90s. Now, whether this had something to do with the liberalization of economy is something that I've not looked into because I don't have the skill set to do it. But 1990s seem to be the best years for Chennai really proliferating itself at the cost of wetlands. So much so, 65% of the wetlands in Chennai today are lost and lost forever. Yet another point that I wish to make is a number of us are very fond of getting into wetland restoration. The fact of the matter is, of all the water bodies that we have in Chennai, which yet again is a debatable number, my own assessment is 425. There are people who say there have been 30,000, 40,000 wetlands here. Fact of the matter is only 10 to 12 are in a position where you can actually restore them. The rest of them are gone forever, and they've undergone an ecological condition called the ecological flip. They've either become deep water bodies or they've become terrestrial areas. So to still maintain that we will keep Chennai's ecology intact sounds a bit fallacious. That is why I had to change the title to something more acceptable. The next slide is even more shocking. It shows the change in green cover. Once again, we have made an assessment which is decadal. What is very stark once again is while the core of the city more or less retains its green cover, thanks to places like Gindi National Park, Theosophical Society, and many of the private dwellings in the more privileged neighborhoods such as Adyar and Prasanagar, Mylapur, Tenampet, the added areas or the suburban Chennai has really lost its green cover. And this need not be understood as areas under forest, but more as orchards, paddy fields, wetland areas, areas that were meadow banks, grassy banks. These have all been completely lost and lost to urban infrastructure of varying kinds. I have no personal agenda in saying this. just that one system has been replaced by the other. In Chennai, if you really look at what has remained intact, because after the 2015 floods, when everybody was fussing over which are the areas that are getting flooded, some of us took it upon ourselves to look at which are the areas that are not getting flooded. And it will interest some of you to know that the 18 reserve forests that dot Chennai remained completely waterlogging free, flooding free. And what remains intact even today as inviolate area, as areas that have been green for centuries are these reserve forest areas, 18 of them. But what is sadly missing is factoring these areas into urban planning. Somehow the urban planning exercise has always dealt with areas under the revenue administration and points of intervention and to the neglect of areas which are under the reserve forest or various other forms of protection by the forest department. Next slide, please. So in all, what you have today is something like this. The brown areas in the map actually talk about areas that have been lost or depict the areas of loss. So it is not really the loss of trees or water bodies, it is the loss of green and blue character that typifies Chennai. It lost the ability to have a green and blue infrastructure. And restoration, as I said earlier, much as we would like to embark on it, is not a 100% goal. What we often end up doing is either transforming the habitat completely or we at best achieve a 10% restoration goal, which is something that ecologists refer to as relictual goal. And resilience to us, at least the ecologists, is not just the ability to bounce back the spatial and temporal needs, but we also need to look at the social dimension. That is something that's been ignored big time in Chennai. Finally, all this has rendered cities, especially Chennai, extremely uncertain. We are not even sure about what to do. That's something I say with all my humility. It's certainly not my version. Next slide, please. I thought I'd just take a few minutes to talk about an exercise that we recently embarked upon, Green the City. After the Varda cyclone, people were talking about how non-native trees were lost and exotic trees were lost, and how the native trees were protected or they survived. So I made this rather dramatic statement in a meeting in the Chennai Corporation saying it's not botany which defines what stands and what gets lost, it's physics. So the commissioner took the opportunity and asked us to prove this. And we embarked on this exercise called the plantation strategy, developing the plantation strategy at detailed project report. It's a 10-volume report. A team of whole lot of researchers worked on it. I will have to say that these of the 10 volumes, probably 1 or 2 volumes have been read by people. Most of them are just lying somewhere in the back office of the Chennai Corporation. Next slide, please. So the field assessment, I mean, this slide essentially talks about the kind of, essentially to highlight the effort that went in. We looked at 527 parks. Yes, you can believe me. Chennai Greater Chennai Corporation has 527 parks in its jurisdiction, 450 kilometers of road, 43 wetlands, and 13 open space reserve land. A very detailed survey was done of all this, looking at what kind of diversity is present, what are the trees, what is the vegetation, stuff like that. Next slide, please. We also did a green cover assessment map. I mean, given the time constraint, let me say that not surprisingly, Adyar was the one who had the maximum number of greenery, and Kodambakam had the least greenery. Next slide, please. We did a stakeholder consultation. I think it is here that I wish to take a couple of minutes to talk about. When we looked at the idea of having the stakeholder consultation for the strategy, everyone, including the Greater Chennai Corporation, said that it is the stupidest thing to do. They said people will come here and scream their heads off. Let's not do it. But what we had in reality was 820 people participating, representing all the zones. It was such a civilized, well-conducted meeting. People had very, very valuable suggestions to give, very serious suggestions to give, and most importantly, a point that Raj Chirubal alluded to, doable solutions. These are not harebrained ideas, but very serious, strictly ecological ideas that people gave. And one of the ideas that came in was, why don't you consider also breeding crematoria? Let the dead be buried in places which are green. Which I thought was phenomenal, that people went to that extent to think about green. So these, the results of this meeting or the output of the meeting were actually factored into the plan that we developed. Next slide, please. So what are the results of relevance? I thought it's important that data is shared. Area under forest cover in Chennai is 9.03%. Vegetated area is only 64 square kilometers. And the per capita green cover that is available to an average Chennai citizen is one of the lowest in the country. It's 8.5 square meters. And then the tree diversity is very, very low. It's just 110 species. This is based on our street assessment. When I talk about street assessment, I also have to share this rather interesting facet of our research. When we initially did the map, it looked at the entire city of Chennai was green and the streets were really dying, having trees, median trees. We were very happy. And then when we embarked on the ground survey, we found that most of the trees that we had actually culled out from the GIS assessment, were actually standing trees inside individual compounds. The streets were bare. The homes maintained whatever little trees there were. Next slide, please.
Madam, you have 3 minutes more.
Yes. Elegant trees have been recommended. Next slide. Next slide, please. So this essentially details what kind of trees have been recommended to what kind of urban infrastructure, covering the arterial roads, sub-arterial roads, the family localities, everything. I mean, bottom line is you now have a green strategy that is doable at the level of a ward. So we developed green strategies for 200 wards, and these are available in this development manner. Next slide. So it will take us 15 years where the tree would have an average worth of 6 people. So the green cover of Chennai is projected to increase by nearly 35%, only if it reaches an approximate area of 87 square kilometers. Provided the population doesn't really go for a talk. Next slide, please. Since we have only 3 minutes, I have only 3 minutes, I'll just summarize that all this was actually tested out in a small ward in number 2 area, where it was perfectly doable and we come up with a plan and this under consideration by GIZ and government of Tamil Nadu. Thank you. I'll stop.
Are you finished, madam?
Many more slides, so I'd rather stop and answer questions.
Okay, we'll take up questions in the Q&A. So thank you, Dr. Venkatesh. Thank you very much for the presentation. It's a little alarming. I mean, that's all I would say. After having heard the Smart City Initiative, you have presented a picture a little disturbing, to say that we have lost so much of wetlands, we have lost green cover. Whenever I land in Chennai and look out of the window, it looks like a green city, but you're telling us that the green cover and the diversity is pretty low. So I guess there is something for all of us to worry. Let me also enthuse and wake up the audience. Dr. Yashri Venkatesh said that she had 800 people coming for the stakeholder workshop. So maybe we should have a little bit more participation in the Q&A. So please post your questions, and as much time as possible, we'll try and handle all of them. So let me move on to the next speaker, and let me invite Mr. Imami Kumar, who's the Deputy Secretary General of ICLEI, and he's going to speak to us on climate proofing of Indian cities. So Dr. Imami Kumar, maybe you could tell us the global role of ICLEI and what they do in helping local governments in terms of sustainability and all of that, and tell us how we as Chennai could improve much better than what Dr. Venkatesh has warned us that we are going down. Over to you, Dr. Imami Kumar, and 15 minutes for you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, thank you. May I have my presentation also? Thanks, Dr. Rao, for giving us this opportunity, and also to MCCI, as well as Ms. Saraswati. She is actually last 4 or 5 days. Sorry, I could not come back to you, ma'am, for answering to your calls and messages, but I'm happy that I'm presenting today. So I was actually, I know this is more on the making Chennai as climate smart city. I was listening to Mr. Raj when he was talking about how the smart city is taking it forward, what's happening in Chennai. But we have, as an ICLEI, ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, we have not worked that much in Chennai, but a lot of other cities in Tamil Nadu, and also more cities in India, and also in South Asia, obviously, and globally. So I'll just talk about what's happening, and thanks. I was also listening to Maheshwaran Rajshekaran when he was talking about climate smart cities assessment, and he categorized, if you can see that, climate warriors to climate champions. I'm happy to say that a lot of our the cities where we are working have, I don't call them champions as yet, but they are almost reaching there, and some of the examples I'm going to give here this presentation today. Next slide, please. As Mr. Rao has asked, I represent this organization called ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability. It is a city association with more than 1,700 cities all over the world. That includes around 80 odd cities in India and around more than 100 cities from South Asia. That includes Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, and Maldives and all. As I said, that all these members comes from more than 100 countries, and we work very closely with the city government on ground to showcase action plans. And when again Rajshekaran was talking about action on ground, we are happy to showcase some of the actions to the city governments, and also making it peer-to-peer learning between the city governments. We influence around 25% of the urban areas in the world. I'm happy to say that. And in this organization, I'm working for the last almost 17, 18 years now, helping various cities in the Asia Pacific region to become more climate neutral, or whatever you want to call them, climate champions, maybe in Indian context. Next slide, please. We work through these 5 pathways, very much linked to what today's making Chennai also maybe the climate smart. We talk about more on the low emission development. We talk about nature-based development. I think my previous speaker was talking about more what's happening on the nature-based systems. We also talk about resilient development and circular development. That is also more important. I was know that on the solid waste front, a lot of Indian cities are looking into the circular development category, and also maybe on the equitable and people-centered development. So this is an organization. We are a 30-year-old organization globally, and in India we are just finished 15 years. We are already into the 16th year, helping not only the city governments but also at the state governments and also the national government. We are also partnered to NIUA and the CQ. But yeah, helping cities. Coimbatore, for example, I can say for the last 14, 15 years, they're working on the climate change activities, and I'm happy to take it forward on that. Next slide, please. This slide just give you, Mahesh has told about what's happening in the Indian context. The Indian government has actually in 2007 formed the PM Council on the climate change, and I don't want to go into all these years what's happening at the cities level on the climate change front, because climate proofing for the cities is the topic what I'm talking about. But we have ratified the Paris Agreement, and there is a roadmap for the government of India. Maybe if you have listened to Prime Minister or the Environmental Minister, we are far ahead with some of the targets what we have kept under the Paris Agreement, and there are a lot of contribution from the city government. So that's where I just want to put it, and I'm happy that Mahesh and Hitesh, both of them from NIUA, has said that they are helping 139 cities through the C-Cube and all that. So that's the latest from the ministry, urban ministry front on the climate smart cities in 2019 and also this year on that. The next slide, please. As most of the cities, I'll say either they have looked into climate mitigation front. whereas the reduction in the carbon emissions or maybe looking into the adaptation front, we also in early years of 2000, 2005, 2000 up to 2010 or 2012, both on two fronts, like one on the adaptation front and one on the mitigation front, we used to help the city governments. But thanks to maybe Vaishali, we'll talk about later on my next speaker. So we have combined both that in one of the examples supported by GIZ in Nashik. She will talk about more on that maybe. But recently we brought in that entire combined methodology. We're calling it Climate Resilient Cities Methodology, CRC, and a lot of our cities where we are helping nearly 40 odd cities, we are helping them to look into the carbon emission inventory, look into the vulnerability risk assessments, and bringing the climate resilience into the city action plan. When we talk about climate proofing, obviously mainstreaming that climate action is what we are helping the cities. And I'm happy, again, I'm stating this statement, a lot of Indian cities are really looking into how can they mainstream the climate action so that they can address the carbon issues, climate change issues within their city activities on that. Next slide, please. So based on this combined methodology, and we also added the scientific angle. Again, I just want to say that Mahesh Rajshekharan, when he was speaking about on the temperature rise or on the floods, and Chennai itself, I think you face a lot of floods situations in that. So what we have done is, and thanks to IIT Madras here, I think Professor Mohan and his team has helped us to study the climate both on the temperature issues, both on the temperature as well as on the rainfall issues, to the extent of maybe not exactly at the Coimbatore city level, but which we have done it, but at least at the district level, we have looked into various states. That methodology brought in that what is going to happen within that district area, what is the rainfall pattern going to be, and what is the maybe temperature pattern going to be. So we linked the scientific angle to this methodology. That's the latest. Again, I'm telling that which we are doing it within most of the Indian cities. So you have climate vulnerability assessment, you have carbon emission inventories, you have the science-based studies. What is going to happen, bringing together and come out with a climate action plan. That's the best thing. What we are helping the city governments to take it forward. Next slide, please. This is about the rainfall thing. I don't want to tell that, as I already said that this is what is the minimum rainfall, what is the maximum rainfall, how the frequency of the rainfall. Again, I think Mr. Mahesh was talking about. So we brought in all those angles into the climate action planning, and I'm happy to tell you that now cities are looking into these action plans and taking it forward for implementation. Next slide. This is so when we did that science-based assessment, we also looked into how much that rainfall or the temperatures are impacting the urban sectors. Like it can be water, it can be land use, it can be seaways, it can be solid waste. So the urban fragile systems we looked into in all these cities, what I'm talking about, where we are working and we are helping them, and categorizing them into various risks. Is it an extreme risk, or is it a high or extreme? What if you can see that slide, the entire all those urban fragile systems we analyzed, assessed, and linked into the climate action plan, so that a foolproof action plan can be prepared and take it forward for implementation on that. Next slide. So when we did this assessment, we looked into including each ward. This is the map of Coimbatore city, and you can see that how those assessment has put onto the ward map and made the wards which are most vulnerable. If you can see the red, green, yellow, and orange ones, the red ones are the most fragile urban fragile wards in Coimbatore city. I don't have that. I'm sorry for the small picture here, but there are 4 or 5 wards which are very vulnerable to all these urban fragile systems. What we looked into that, and this type of exercise we are doing it in more than 30 odd cities in India, and also so many other cities in the South Asia and also Asia Pacific region through our organization on that. Next slide. So based on all this analysis, we looked into, again, as I'm saying, all these sectors: road, transportation, urban poor, as Mr. Raj and Mr. Hitesh was talking about in his presentations. So all the urban systems, solid waste, buildings, land use, sewage, right, drainage systems, street lighting, water supply, road transport. Analysis has brought into these sectors and prepared the action plan on that. Next. So these are the action plans with a target. In one of our projects, I have a few other slides to show on various projects, but I'm not going into. But at least these are the 4 cities. You can see that the cities have set a target, that how much they want to reduce the carbon emissions, how much they want to improve their vulnerability systems, vulnerability wards on those various sectors. And you can see that the numbers which are showing with the red arrows, they have already reduced those actions. And some of these cities, Coimbatore has become one of the climate capital in the previous assessment of the Government of India, and also the Rajkot, Udaipur. All these are becoming examples that they are what they have done on ground to other cities to learn and take it forward on that. And some of these assessments, I'm happy to help the Chennai city also to take it forward if they are interested, because under present project, we are also planning to help entire the state government as well as all the smart cities in Chennai to achieve climate actions on ground on that. Next slide. These are the various actions which I just want to maybe take 2 minutes here to tell that the photograph at the bottom with the solar panels. This is one of the project which was inaugurated last year by the Gujarat Chief Minister in the city of Rajkot. The entire water supply system, the water system in the city of Rajkot runs through the renewable energy systems, and also the housing for all. The corner diagonally opposite to that, if you can see again the renewable energy system under the housing for all scheme, we have helped most of the low income housing schemes projects in Rajkot have started implementing through the renewable energy system, the solar panels and all their common resources, common services have been linked to the renewable energy on that. We also have, you can see the biomethanation plant in Coimbatore, and also other activities, air pollution activities and other things which are there in that. Next slide.
Mr. Mani Kumar, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. I will finish it up. So these are the various activities in city of Coimbatore. If you can talk about on the solid waste management, we are helping them almost like 20-25 odd wards, bringing the zero waste from those wards, and also the solid waste management strategy for the next 25 years, which we have looked into, and biomethanation plant, which was inaugurated recently, has become a model now, as other cities can take it forward on the air pollution front. And also the other thing which I want to put it is, I'm happy to tell that all these cities where we have prepared those climate action plans have also allocated budget. I think Mr. Mahesh and as well as Hitesh was also talking about in his speeches. The city governments are allocating the budget to take forward the implementation of actions on ground. So that's an interesting thing, and I'm happy to share here on that. Next slide. This is one, as I said already, city housing scheme has installed the solar water heating systems for their common resources. Next slide. As on today in India, more than 30 odd cities have come out with climate vulnerability assessments or action plans. I'm happy, as I said, that we are helping other cities also to look into the climate assessment framework and reach whatever they can reach. So that's that type of on-ground support we are giving cities. And this is another important assignment which we did it in 2 cities in Rajasthan and 2 cities in Maharashtra, where we looked into the integrated urban water management system within the city, bringing not only the city area but also the peri-urban areas also, and a lot of pilot interventions on the regeneration of the bore wells, regeneration of the ponds within the few cities in Rajasthan have helped to take it forward, and looking into the climate angle also on that. So this is another, I know that you have floods in Chennai, but a lot of ponds, I think the previous speaker is saying that there are only 420 odd water streams are left out, but used to be 30,000 odd actually. So we are happy to support even Chennai in this particular front on that too, like examples. Next. 3 more slides, sir, and I will finish. Next, this is what I already said. Examples. Next. This is one thing I just want to add because this is important. I think the previous speaker is also talking about. These are the few cities we are helping to come out with urban biodiversity, the local biodiversity strategy action plans. So we are linking the biodiversity action plan into the climate action plan actually. So the overall climate action plan, what I can say that you can see the Kochi, Gangtok, Siliguri, and Nagpur. We prepared these strategies, biodiversity strategies, and also the resource plans, resource maps, which we have prepared in the cities. Those cities can take it forward for implementation on the activities on that. Next 2 slides. Next slide. Go to the next slide. Yeah, this is my last slide. What we also are doing that is, I know that maybe Chennai has a lot of money. They don't need money from cities. But for the action, the implementation of the actions, we have came out in 2016, the Transformative Action Program, wherein we are linking the climate actions to the international financing. Few of the Indian cities, we have already done that. And we are happy to help any city if they need international funding. Not only, I know that Government of India, to various schemes, or the state governments are bringing money to implement these action plans, but we are happy to link some of those action plans, if you are interested, to the international financing through this particular program, the TAP program, and hopefully you will get more finances to implement on ground on that. Next. Yeah, this is on the awareness front, and I'm happy to stop here from that. We have done a lot of awareness this thing last year in Delhi. We did the Asia Pacific Urban Resilient and Adaptation Forum. We call it Resilient Cities Asia Pacific Congress. More than 200 participants from all over the Asia Pacific region are participated here in that. And Chennai was there, Coimbatore was there presenting those activities in this thing. Thank you. Thanks a lot. And I'm sorry for taking more time, sir. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Manikumar. I think it's a detailed presentation, technical presentation in many ways of the management framework, evaluation framework, and very granular. And glad to see so many cities. I don't know, one of the comments that you made, Chennai has a lot of money. That didn't resonate well. We can always do with money, and because we have a lot of work to ground to cover, really, literally. So I don't know where that impression came from. I think somehow I'm going to ask Madam Saraswati to connect you over the unit to be connected. You can fund some urgent projects that would be good. So we'll move on to thank you once again, and we'll move on to the last but not least speakers today. I have pleasure in introducing Ms. Vaishali Nandan. She heads GIZ India in the Climate City Smart City project. And I understand that a few case studies in a few cities have been done under the Urban Labs project in India. Not quite sure which city she's planning to present today, but I understand a couple of cities would be taken as example and walk us through what has happened in these cities. Over to you, Ms. Vaishali Nandan.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much. I do not know why my video is not being shared.
Switch it on.
Yeah, maybe.
Saraswati, can you help?
Swarna, have we blocked by any chance? No?
Ma'am, your video is actually, it's on. Maybe if you could see in the left side, it is there is an option to open their video. Start video option is there. You can select that. Could you able to see that, ma'am? Next to mute is the start video.
Yeah, I have put it on, but it's not, taking. Maybe I just re-enter. Yeah, but if you could just start my presentation, I will.
The screen sharing rights is given to you, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
But Swarna, in case if she's not able to show, please.
I've kept it ready, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
She has a problem with the video, so this also may not come.
Saraswati, if you can share the video or get the video to be shared.
Swarna, please. You can start showing the video. I'm sorry, the PPT or video, whatever.
Especially you may start. I think the screen is visible.
Re-entering herself, re-logging in. Vaishali?
I don't think she's there.
Maybe in the meantime, you want to take some questions?
No, that's not the flow. I think we'll just give it some time. We're okay on time.
Okay, yeah.
Unless she doesn't appear for 2 minutes, then she's back.
Okay.
Yes, there she comes. Welcome, welcome, Vaishali.
I think I'm visible as well.
You're very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think there are always technical glitches when it comes to online versions of various things, but yeah, that's the new normal. So what I have for you today, and maybe also connecting both to Uma Maheshwaran and to Imani Kumar. Thanks, Kumar, for talking about the climate action plan, which we did jointly in Nasik. However, today I would be presenting something even absolutely different, and looking at solving urban challenges, I think critical for all of us, and innovation using design thinking methods, something that since this event is also organized by the Madras Chamber, probably from industrial side, you are all aware of design thinking methodology in development of products. Now, this is something that's we are increasingly now using in the urban front, and I would, like to present to you two experiments, a little more actually, but what we have done, and I have personally been part of them. Next slide, please. So just what I will present about GIZ and about the two projects and the interventions. Next, please. So GIZ is a bilateral cooperation between the government of Germany and government of India, and through them we work on the funds provided by the German Ministry of Economic Cooperation and the Ministry of Environment. And we work on various areas, and in India, urban development is one of them. Energy, environment, and public sector involvement are the others. Next, please. A little brief and on the Climate Smart Cities project that is working in Coimbatore. Next, please. And also it's also active in two other cities, Kochi and Coimbatore, Kochi and Bhubaneswar. And at the ministry level, we are supporting the Smart Cities mission, where we've helped the Climate Smart Cities assessment framework, and we are working very closely with NIUA and with Mahesh and his team. And we are also working with the municipal corporations in 3 cities. The idea being, of course, to anchor climate-friendly solutions in urban infrastructure projects and area-based development. This is project-based, and we have various partners, and NIUA is one of them. So the intervention that I will talk about, next please, is Pasumai Kovai. This is something that we started with Coimbatore sometime August last year, where the first series of workshops happened. Next, please. So it's about branding, but it's also about using the urban design thinking methodology to create awareness and to build a model together to look at jointly solving any issue. And for us, the issue here was the urban green cover. So the first round, it's a kind of a standard methodology, but I would still like to, show the dynamism with which the same thing can be used. So we spent through a whole stakeholder. It was a mixed plethora: NGO, think tanks, the municipal corporation, institutes, state government, so officers, community. So a lot of people came together. There was an online survey. There were, I think, 24,000 hits. However, 1,000 people from within Coimbatore, within certain areas, actually filled in that survey. And jointly, we were trying to understand what the issue is regarding urban green for Coimbatore. Is it relevant? Is it not? The methodology then talks about empathize to actually figure out what is it that you want to do, and then you define a challenge. Okay, and that challenge then is something that you come up with. And what we came up with was certain areas were green, certain not, and the local neighborhood parks was something that the city wanted us to look at. Next, please. This we combined then with research, and we actually, looked at the amount of green that was available within the city. So the city had about 36% of urban green cover. However, certain areas were, if you look at it, this is a zonal map. One zone was way more green than the others, and we were told to work in a west zone, which was kind of in the middle, and that's where the area for us was identified. Next, please. So then the round 2 was when we came back. We met the community. The photographs that you see on the right are, again, this was a second round where along with the community, we went down, understood their problem, what is their need. This was for a park area, and which was not really developed. And then we sat with you see here, officers from the corporation, somebody from the agriculture university, NGOs. We sat together and developed a prototype. Now, currently in this project, that's the stage that we are, and we need to go down and test our prototype model. However, that because of COVID, we are not being really able to travel. This intervention we are doing with TU Berlin. Post this, we will go on to look at a pre-feasibility study of this concept and actually look at business model, that this park development actually becomes into a reality. We have about 4 years to go, so 1.5 more years of this intervention, and we hope that this methodology will help us then yield a good plan which can then be maintained by the local residents, and also there's enough that can be sustained over the period of time. Next, please. I would like to show you the same methodology now used for another problem-solving issue in Bhubaneswar. This is under a global project, ICT-based adaptation to climate change in cities. Next, please. And what we did there was combine 3 aspects, looking at urban development, climate change issues, and digital. Here, the focus is digital. We've just completed this project last month, and this was running in 3 countries. India was one of them. And the idea was to develop a digital solution. Next, please. And the issue was here in Bhubaneswar, stormwater management or urban flooding, but the pre, not post. So once the flood happens, no. So before the flood starts happening, so what is it that the city could do? So that is what they identified. They said that was their main problem identification when it came to urban flooding. Then through an ideation and a co-creation process, we developed a prototype, checked the reality on the ground through design options. Next, please. And the next round was sprint. So there were 2 rounds of sprint where that model that was developed through the prototype was actually then put in various, of how it would look as the app. So various designs were tested. The gamification theory was applied. They went, the team went on the ground, checked it, came back to the drawing board. So this was several layers of iteration. Next, please. So what came around actually at the end of this was a digital solution which had 3 aspects. One was the citizen interface, where citizens would feed in data. The second in the middle that you see is a kind of a map which would be linked to the smart cities command and control center in the city. In Bhubaneswar would feed in data. So once a citizen, fed in data, depending on the priority of the situation and the data that fed in, there would be a red or a different colored dot. That information would go to the supervisor. That's the other app that is developed. And once the work was done, the supervisor would feed in, and that red dot would become a green dot. You could also prioritize, so the actions of the cities could also be prioritized, and real-time action could happen. So you would know that downstream of the road is something that you need to go now, and upstream you can go a little later. So the supervisors would also be able to really prioritize their actions. So this is something that came out of it, and currently it was developed for two pilot areas, and now we are upscaling it for the entire city. Next, please. It's available in both hybrid and Android versions, called Move City Savior. There were a lot of community outreach, and the achievement in the end, of course, this is also much awarded by the Smart Cities mission itself, and something I thought would be very useful for Chennai. So with that, I think I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Nandan. Thank you for this new approach to innovation in urban thinking, like application of design thinking. I think given us some food for thought. Before I put it open for the Q&A, let me do one thing. Let me ask one question of each speaker. Maybe we go in the order in which the speakers presented. So, Dr. Uma Maheshwaran, if you were to put on your thinking hat and speak to Madras Chamber of Commerce and the audience here, and through that city, what do you think we should do to become not warriors, not climate warriors, but climate champions? What do you think at a high level Chennai should do?
First and foremost thing is, what the chamber brings in is a collective across different industries and different practices. How do you start looking at climate change as not one-off issue, but as a part of your day-to-day activity? Because climate is something which affects everyone in their day-to-day actions, and every action what you do has a certain contribution or a relevance to it. So I'm really not talking about switching off lights or not using, a petrol or a diesel vehicle and things like that. I'm looking in terms of within your business activities, getting all people to start planning for these extreme events is something which is very critical, because that's a win-win situation, because where you don't lose out the money, you're actually saving money, right? So
some practical tips, sir. What does that mean?
Practical tip is, first do a detailed assessment of impact of floods, because that is something which has already taken place in the past. You don't really have to wait for a climate change even to happen to estimate the kind of losses that has taken place. Estimate the loss and damage which has taken place across various businesses. That provides a very good case for investing on climate. So once you account for the losses, to basically prevent such losses from occurring in the future. That's a simple enough step. And the second one is, of course, we are working with the Chamber of Commerce and Industries in terms of creating a data observatory. I think that was something which is still not taking shape in some form. I think I would suggest that having data made available for your day-to-day decision making is something which is going to be a very critical aspect, for both the industries, but also for the city in general. So you should create a data dashboard and start sharing more data and information in terms of emissions. You should start sharing more information in terms of manufacturing industries and where they are located. Start sharing information more in terms of water consumption pattern across various industries and so on and so forth.
Okay, well, we hear you very clearly on that. Thank you. So Dr. Jayashree Venkatesan, spoke very eloquently as usual, on the biodiversity, and I think there's no argument that That's something that we need to restore back. But I think you also made a couple of points that not sure what to do. We seem to have damaged so much that you actually use some words that you're not very sure what to do. So what do we do now? When experts are lost, where does the city planners go? Dr. Jayashree, are you there? Saraswati, can you help locate her?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find Jayashree, and I'll send her a message. Okay, you can move on to the other person.
Okay, we'll move on. We'll move on. So Imami Kumar, I think you kind of working with many cities around the world. What's your impression of where Chennai is? I mean, I don't know if you've done work on Chennai, kind of hinted you have, but what's your impression? Where are we? I mean, are we somewhere in the middle, or are we in the third quartile or first quartile from a climate preparedness point of view? And you don't have to be polite here. You can tell us.
No, I don't have to be polite, but I'm planning to visit next week, so I don't want to be stopped anywhere in Chennai.
No, we're good people.
I know. I'm a South Indian from Visakhapatnam, but now for the Tamil Nadu.
That's not enough for us.
Yeah, but I'm blunt enough. I think Chennai used to do a lot of things. In my previous assignments, I was involved so much. I'm supposed to study in Guindy, but I moved to Delhi. That's why I didn't study there. But I think on the visitation front, a lot of issues. I think my previous speaker also said, and on the public transport, I think you guys are again started buying the cars. Chennai used to have very good public transport system. I don't know how much it is really doing that now. Everybody has their own cars, and I think so. You should go back to the more public transport. I know that you have the metro and all, but more routes and more this thing, it should be there. My answer to your question, sir, is that yes, you started doing work a long time back, but midway, I think you have not stepped to the frequency or the speed up the things what you are supposed to do or have not done. I hope after seeing all the floods and all the issues in last few years, my suggestion to the Chennai is, let us speed up the activities what you are supposed to do. And one small suggestion, I think, in addition to what Mahesh has said, maybe if you can bring Madras Chamber of Commerce can bring all the stakeholders at one place. Not just government. Government can't do each and everything, I think, and MCCI can be a good mediator between the public and as well as the government and industries. Come together as a stakeholder, talk about waste minimization, talk about greenery, talk about public transport, anything like all these things. If you can start doing that, you can be the climate capital as soon as maybe next 10 to 15 years, maybe if not less than that.
Thank you. And Ms. Vaishali, you've done a detailed study of Coimbatore and you explained, but given that Chennai is proximate to Coimbatore and not exactly the same. I mean, we are a coastal city, we are an industrial city, we're a much larger city, and there are some differences, there are some similarities. What would you think? Where should Chennai start?
Start small, think neighborhood, but scale up. I think there have been initiatives where GIZ has had the instance to work. There used to be one project called Cities Fit for Climate Change, which ended sometime 2018, and they were looking at one of the canals and trying to rejuvenate it. The whole thing is it's sometimes it's really daunting if you look at these large megalopolises and metropolises, and then suddenly you feel that you can't really do anything. But if you really break it up, each large metropolitan or megalopolis can actually be broken down into various tangible, micro areas, and each has their own dynamism. And do think if you can use the urban design thinking methodology, because it's eventually geared and geared really towards the pinpoint solution that is missing. So sometimes administrators tend to create a solution, or various organizations tend to create a solution which is important, but which in their perception is important. The touch base with the community and back, and the testing and remodeling of that is something that product design really does, and has really perfected. And this something is a methodology that I really found very, very, very good and useful. The solution that I presented also on purpose for the app, the Smooth Savior app, is something that Chennai can take. Of course, there would be you would need to modify it to your city's needs, because certain dashboard and certain things would have to be modified. However, this is freely available. It's developed for the smart cities, of course, mission, and it can be used. It would not be a very costly thing, but coming then to the city, I think it would be really, really useful. So this is something that I would want to just say. But action is the key.
We hear you. The good old formula of divide and conquer. So we start small and then we do that well, and then we scale it, use design thinking. Very good. Thank you very much for that. Let me see. We have had some questions come up. And first question looks like it's a question for the last chamber. Will the presentations be shared? Would you want to take that? I think these are very good presentations. Some of them have been very, very illuminating. Do you think we'll be sharing them with the audience?
If the presenter doesn't have any objection, we have no objection. We normally share.
Okay.
We'll send the link to the participants. Yeah.
Right. So we will get them across as best as we can. Right. And I think some people have even expressed that while you have training sessions, I think these were mainly meant for sessions from Mr. Uma Maheshwaran, and they get access to those trainings. I guess this is trainings for government people and urban officials. How do people here get exposure to this training material? There's a question here for, is Mrs. Venkatesan back? Dr. Venkatesan, is she back?
I'm not able to get her response.
Okay, there's a question for her, so I'm going to skip that in case she's not here. There's a question here. I don't know who this is meant for. This is from Shyamala Man. It's meant to Dr. Venkatesan. The groundwater dropping in most cities, including in Chennai. How have you been able to identify species of trees, I guess, which are better suited for avenue tree plantation? Would you suggest deep-rooted trees or shallow-rooted trees?
I think this only Jayashree can answer. And she has
we'll pass it on to her.
Yes, we'll pass it on to her. Dr. Shyamala, please.
So one question I would ask for all, I think in the interest of time, I think I've seen the questions. These are very generic ones, but I'm kind of paraphrasing them, and maybe each of the speakers can just react to this very briefly. So you've heard, the smart city plans that Chennai has put out. I mean, as someone said, Tamil Nadu is the most urbanized state. We have 12 smart cities in the top 100, and Chennai being one of the more prominent cities. In fact, the largest city, and the plan being underway. Raj outlined the details of some of this thing. What would you think, based on what Chennai is doing in the smart city, two things that could really leverage and move Chennai up the curve in fighting climate change? Just 2 points from each of you, keeping in mind what Chennai's smart city plans do. What are 2 points? So we can go in the same order. Dr. Uma Maheshwaran.
Yeah, what Chennai can do is quite a lot of things. One of the things which it has done, and which it should also start expanding it to other areas, is making the roads more pedestrian and bicycle friendly. I think that initiative is already started. I think that one key thing, because the more the roads you make, the more the cars are going to come or ply on them. But the more the pedestrian and the bicycle paths are created, I think more people will start walking. It's going to be healthier. more people will start using non-motorized transport, which is going to be a better means of communication or transportation across the city. The second thing which Chennai should also do, and this is also I'm speaking for Dr. Jayashree, I think your water conservation and your wetland conservation activities needs to be upscaled. I think more and more water conservation activities are undertaken by the municipal corporation, but I think the wetland conservation is something which is very critical. If Chennai doesn't do it within the next 10 years, probably the rate of loss is going to be even more, So I think wetland conservation should be something which has to be taken up in a very serious manner and implemented. Thank you.
That's very, very good points. Only thing is, Chennai is known as the Detroit of Asia, of India. And also you're telling us that we should make cars for the rest of the world and not for Chennai. So we'll keep that in mind. Mr. Umami Kumar, what are 1 or 2 points that you think that Chennai smart city plan would take off from what you've seen around the world?
I will maybe, I think in addition to what Dr. Rajshekharan has said, maybe on the waste management, one thing I just want to, I know that you guys are doing a lot of things in Chennai. Collection system is good, but I think the periphery, the outside areas have not yet been properly linked to the waste management process. If I am not wrong, whatever I understood a year back, I think, if not that. So that I think the solid waste management system needs to be upgraded further in Chennai. That's one thing. The second thing. I still remember, like I used to stay a lot in Chennai 10, 12 years back, but still you have a lot of low-lying areas, which if it rains, then you have a lot of water within that. So I don't know whether Chennai Municipal Corporation has done, Metropolitan Authority has done a map for the entire city, vulnerability assessment map. We are happy to assist them if they need any support from us, or through NIUA, maybe if Mahesh can help them out. I think they need to do a vulnerability assessment map and make sure all the low-lying areas, I think you have to address that as immediately as possible within the system to make sure, water don't lie within the roads and it goes onto the ponds or the drainage system. And my last point, I think, linking to Dr. Jayashree or my previous speaker and Maheshwaran, improving the green cover within the city. I saw the photograph what she has shown 10 years back, and now I think only those Gindi, those areas you have still the trees, vegetarian green cover is there, but a lot of other places it's gone. And with MCCI, I think you guys come together, all of you, and planting of trees, and make sure that the survival rate is more than 85 to 90%. I think that's the main thing which you need to, because plantation drives are going on for every year. Every year you do millions of trees are planted, but how many are surviving, and how do you take it forward on that? I think that's a major point which you need to look at. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the comments. I think we are reaching the end of time. So Vaishali has indicated that she also has to leave. So I don't want to summarize, but I have anything to add.
Has joined, Raghu. Just want to give her a minute.
Okay, just a minute. If you have, the question you have is.
Am I audible now, sir?
You have to be louder.
Yeah, I'll be very loud.
So one point that you think that people in Chennai should hear, the government should hear, the people of Chennai should hear, what should we do to become more climate resilient?
I think what needs to be done is a comprehensive master plan, which is currently underway, that needs to be scientific and extremely inclusive. It needs to involve institutions beyond the celebrated institutions or premier institutions. Local capacities need to be built, and we need to engage with frontline staff of the government and not just the principal secretaries. Thank you.
Oh, that's very pithy and very comprehensive and very hard hitting. Thank you, madam. So, so I think we've really had enough of points, enough of wisdom today from our eminent speakers. So let me thank all of them on behalf of the chamber. Thank you very much for taking the time out and coming and sharing these views. And over to you, Saraswati.
Oh, big thanks. I don't want to take much of your time for the excellent moderation and the excellent speakers. Maybe more questions as they come. We will be in touch with the speakers and try to get their views and pass on. A big thanks to one and all for the technical session 1. Thank you. We will now move to the technical session 2. While I request the panelists and the moderator to find yourself in, we will play. Thank you very much. We will play a quick video of Grunforce. They have all been supportive to this program also, but by the time I invite Mr. Dr. Ashwin Mahalingam, the moderator, and the other speakers, Mr. Krishna Mohan Ramachandran, Mr. Piyush Deva, and Dr. Pascaline to just get into the e-platform or e-dice. Just bear with us for a 2 minutes video. Grunforce is also there to talk about the water resources. Just a 2 minute by the time you settle down. The audio is it's not there. No.
Yeah, we will check it up, ma'am.
It's not playing properly. Otherwise, we can start the session, have it at the end also. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. I would introduce Dr. Ashwin Mahalingam and then leave to him to introduce me. Very quickly. We have been working with IIT Madras and particularly with Dr. Ashwin. So I'm not going to take much time. He joined as the faculty in the Building Technology and Construction Management Division of Civil Engineering Department in IIT in 2006. He received his BTech in Civil Engineering from IIT Madras itself and then proceeded to Stanford University for a Master's in Construction Engineering and Management. He then helped start up an internet-based company in the US called All-Star Fleet, aimed at providing asset management services for construction companies. Following this, he returned to Stanford University to pursue his PhD in the area of infrastructure project management. His research interests are in the areas of public-private partnerships, quite well said since I said we are also working with him on quite a few projects in infrastructure planning and management, governing large engineering projects. His current research focuses on institutional strengthening and post-governance of PPP projects in India. He is also a co-founder of Okapi Advisory Services, with whom again we did a sort of program after the Chennai floods in 2015, as you would recall, Dr. Ashwin. Over to you now.
Thank you very much, Madam, for the very kind introduction, and also thank you and many congratulations to MCCI for being able to put this event together under these kinds of difficult circumstances, because I think these are the kinds of dialogue that we need to sort of continue to have. And if you somehow break the momentum, then the discussions fall apart. So I think it is great that we're having this discussion, and that too on a very important topic. So this session is on disasters and also the lessons that we can learn from recent disasters. And although I was not there for the entire panel, the previous panel, I came in towards the fag end. It probably seems to link quite well with the resilience and disaster theme that we had in the previous session as well. So let me just lay a few opening thoughts and then introduce our panelists so we can get the session started. I think Chennai is no stranger to disasters. I think the last few years, we constantly seem to be living on the edge. Of course, the floods a few years ago were publicized internationally and, caused quite a bit of loss economically as well as socially, to the city. But, slightly less heralded was what came after, which was the drought, right, the following year, where essentially you had excess of water and we're trying to figure out what to do with it 1 year, and then you have essentially no rainfall and groundwater reserves that are depleting the second year. And so the city had to respond in very, very different ways to two sort of disasters that were in some sense on either side of the spectrum. And when I say the city had to respond, clearly the government played a very important role, the Corporation of Chennai and a variety of allied departments. But at the same time, these are things that sort of need collective action in some sense. It comes down to the government, it comes down to businesses, it comes down to people, welfare groups, NGOs. Everyone sort of has a role to play, and mobilizing against these kinds of disasters involves engineering and technology solutions, certainly. And coming from IT, that's something that I'm familiar with. So you really want better stormwater drains and better technologies and all of that. But it's not purely just an engineering, phenomenon, right? So the solution to all of this is not just better engineering. It comes down to changing people's behaviors, providing a whole set of economic incentives that allow people to interact in different ways, possibly change at the legal and policy level so that different kinds of interventions are allowed to be brought in. So I think there are layers of change. You've got to be a lawyer, an economist, a sociologist, an engineer, all rolled into one to really be able to figure out how we can be more resilient when it comes to disasters. And of course, today we have, we are of course not alone in this, but we are still affected by this disaster that we are now calling this pandemic that we are now calling COVID-19, which is, we call it COVID-19 because it was essentially labeled in 2019. We're almost at the end of 2020. Right, and the pandemic shows no signs of leaving, although it seems to be slowly abating. And the jury is out as to how far into 2021 we will actually have to go. So again, another situation where Chennai needs to respond. And again, the response is variegated, right? So partly the response is with regards to technology. How do you detect cases? How do you, isolate people? How do you test more rapidly? But the response also has to do with policy. When do you lock down? How do you lock down? With the social behavior, with economic incentives, when do you restart industries versus when do you keep them shut? Which industries do you restart? So I think we've had these experiences over the years in terms of disasters, facing them, strategizing them, coming out and learning from them. I'm not necessarily saying that we've handled them perfectly, but we have been able to come out of them and we have been able to learn. And so I think this is an extremely interesting session where we actually have people from different walks of life. We have people from the private sector. We have people from sort of the non-governmental sector, right, who are going to tell us about disasters, lessons that we've learned, and potential takeaways. Not just in Chennai, although I'm a resident of Chennai and MCCI is the Madras Chamber of Commerce. Some of our stories actually come from outside of Chennai, which I think is extremely important as we seek to learn from international experience and implement that in the Indian as well as in the Chennai context. So what we're going to do for roughly the next hour or so is to listen to 4 speakers, right? And I introduce them in detail just before they talk, but I'll just sort of give you the lineup. We have Krish, as he's popularly called, Krishna Mohan Ramachandran, who is Chennai's Chief Resilience Officer, right? And so he's going to talk a little bit about Chennai and disasters and risk resilience. We have Mr. Saravanan Paneerselvam from Grundfos, and Grundfos, unfortunately, we were not able to play the video at the beginning, but hopefully we'll finish a few minutes ahead of time and play the video at the end. But Grundfos is one of our large industrial partners, a very well-known organization that has also been at the forefront of helping Chennai think through several sustainability and resilience strategies. Then we have Piyush Dhawan, who's the co-founder of the Circular Collective, who's going to be talking about the circular economy. And I think that is an extremely important idea in terms of how do we close the loop in terms of the way we use resources so that we can actually be more sustainable, mitigate climate change, and therefore mitigate all kinds of disasters and improve our resilience. And finally, we have Ms. Pascaline Gabori. I'm not sure, Pascaline, if I pronounced your last name correctly, but yeah, apologize if I did not. From Pilot for Dev, which is an organization in Belgium, and we're going to talk about examples from Indonesia. So we have people who are going to talk about, disasters, resilience, and lessons across these contexts. So what we'll do for the next hour is we'll go through each of them. Each of them have about 15 minutes, and they've got presentations that they will give. And at the end of all of that, hopefully, if we are on time, we have a good 15 to 20 minutes for Q&A and discussion. Right. So without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce our first speaker, who's Krishna Mohan Ramachandran. Most of us know him as Krish. Krish has been the Chief Resilience Officer, the CRO of Chennai since 2017. And this was, he came in as part of a program called the 100 Resilient Cities program that the Rockefeller Foundation has set up. They selected 100 cities across the world. Chennai was one of them. And each of these cities was given a resilience officer and tasked with coming up with a resilience plan and a strategy. And Krish spearheaded that, that effort. And so now, as the CRO, he works very closely with the GCC, the Greater Chennai Corporation, as well as with NGOs, with IIT Madras. He and I have worked for quite some time with civil society and so on to build a more resilient Chennai. So, Krish, let me turn it over to you, and if you can take 15 minutes and tell us your views on resilience and lessons learned.
Thank you very much, Ashwin. I'll take it from here. Let me just share my presentation. Yeah, good evening, folks. I hope all of you can hear me well. The topic that I've been asked to speak on this evening is Chennai has seen it all. And since I have lived in Chennai all my life, I've seen the city through my eyes as well. Yes, Chennai has seen it all. I mean, from the tsunami in 2004 to the cyclones that the Northeast monsoon brings to us every year or so. And like Ashwin just said, I mean, we fluctuate between floods and drought. So in 2015, for example, we had the worst floods ever. And in 2019, we had our worst drought ever. So how do we make our city more resilient in the face of such disasters? And to understand this, let's take a look at the definition of urban resilience. So what is urban resilience? It's the capacity of individuals, communities, institutions, businesses, and systems within a city to survive, adapt, and thrive, no matter what kinds of chronic stress and acute shocks they are experiencing. Yeah. So, but what does building resilience mean in the context of disasters? We are often linked to an organization that manages disaster response, but in reality, we are a long-term disaster mitigation and adaptation organization. Yeah. So, what does this mean in the context of building resilience within a city? It means building redundancies, and that's the backbone of any city resilience plan. So quite simply put, this is how many backup fail-safe options can you build to help a city mitigate the challenges that it faces. So, sorry, yeah. So I want to give you an example of using water, which is really close to all of us. So water and Chennai through the resilience lens, what does it look like? We say that floods like a crying baby get far more attention but we are actually a drought-prone city. And let me give you an example of all the different things that this city is doing between the city government, the Metro Water, a couple of NGOs and others. This is not just a Chennai Resident Cities initiative. In this effort, every part of the city is involved. So we're looking at supply and then we're looking at demand. So the first, of course, is to see how do we convert Chennai and make it a sponge city. Now, what do I mean by this? We get adequate rainfall. We get the northeast monsoon and we get the southwest. But how do we make Chennai? How do we put systems in place through urban forests and urban farms to help hold and conserve and slow that water and put it into the ground instead of running it into the sea? So there are many plans here in terms of urban forestry and in terms of urban farms, which I'll speak very briefly at the end of this presentation. We've looked at rainwater harvesting. It's something that we've done very successfully, but much more work needs to be done in this area. We're looking at recycling of water. We're looking at restoring our lakes, rivers, and canals. And if you have an optimistic point of view, which I have, I believe that in the next 5 to 6 years, you'll have clean water running in our water bodies. The Metro Water has thought out of the box, and they're tapping our quarries to supplement the water that city requires. They're building a weir across the Parar. So instead of letting the rainwater flow into the sea, can we hold it back so that the city can make use of it? And of course, we have our desalination plants, which are accounting for maybe 15 to 20% of the total needs of the city in terms of drinking water at present. But it's not just about supply, it's also about demand. And taking a lesson out of Cape Town, which went into an extreme drought situation in 2017, we found that every household in Cape Town has water metering. And the city is hoping to do that here as well. Because if you're not monitoring your water, what used by each household, then how do you actually control that demand? And many of you may not know, but this city has one of the lowest water tariffs in the world. Then we're looking at awareness campaigns on how to save water. We as citizens of Chennai, and I've lived here, like I said, all my life, we're very quick to point fingers. But there are little things that we can do at home to actually cut the consumption of water by almost 50% if we were to accept and do those little things at home. Finally, to promote water efficient appliances, I'm really talking again of very small things like the little gadget that you can fit to a tap to increase the efficiency of the water coming out of it, but at the same time use less water. So this is classic resident strategy. How do you put different fail-safe options in place, backup options in place to be able to help the city meet one of its key challenges? But we know for a fact that we fluctuate between floods and drought. And so we can plan for it, and that's what we're doing. But what do you do when life throws a curved ball at you? Yeah. COVID came out of the blue, they say, but many of us know that it came out of China. But the fact is, the lockdown did come out of the blue. And how effective has that lockdown been is still being debated across the world. But I had the privilege, I had a pass to go across the city during the days of the lockdown. I was giving out food packets to the homeless poor, and I could see that in the back streets of Chennai, where the vulnerable communities live, where the urban poor live, they didn't have the luxury of social distancing or physical distancing. And I truly believe that one of the things that really has worked for us against this virus is our basic immunity. but I was also happy to see that many fail-safe systems kicked in during this period. The community came together like we always do. The resident welfare associations, the NGOs, the corporates, and even international organizations like my own, the Rockefeller Organization, and other governments like the Brussels Capital Region stepped in to help the city mitigate its challenges. So one such example that I'd like to talk about briefly, and something that I'm really, really proud to be a part of, is the COVID-19 Save Chennai Beaches campaign, which was done by a group of people who came together in Kalakshetra, Adyar, Besant Nagar, Thiruvanmayur to save Chennai's beaches. They tied up with the Sumanasa Foundation, which is run by T.M. Krishna, to help raise funds to help the daily wage earner, the migrant worker, and the homeless to mitigate the kind of challenges that they were facing during the time of this COVID. And I just want to highlight a few points. By the 53rd day of the pandemic, of the lockdown, we had raised 40 lakhs, and we had helped out 52,000 migrant workers and daily wage earners. We had served 250,000 meals and transferred 19 lakhs in cash for buying dry rations, for medicines, and for tickets to go home. During this period, we addressed 997 distress calls. We validated each one of them and then got as much information as we could about each one of these migrant workers. So what were their names, their telephone numbers, where were they from, what kind of occupation were they involved in? And as a result of which, if you look on the right-hand side of the map, we were able to actually put down where do these migrant workers come from. And if you look at that, you'll see that about 50% of them really came from Jharkhand and 25% from West Bengal. So this was again a classic example of how different systems that existed within the city came together to help the city in a time of crisis and help it manage and mitigate the COVID response. So what have we learned from COVID? We learned to value our daily wage earner and our migrant worker, and of course our domestic worker. We learned the value of resilience of our informal economy. We learned that in a crisis, we come together well, and that's always happened in the city of Chennai. We learned that some people can make all the difference. For example, DC South and DC RNF helped us coordinate the different elements here. So the community, the Resident Welfare Association, and the NGOs coordinate much more closely with the government and put out a much more concerted effort. We learned that having the right data that is accessible to all is critical. And this happened through the WhatsApp groups. We were able to share information on how many hospital beds were available across the city. We could share information on how many shelters still had space to take on migrant workers. We were able to share information on how many Amma canteens were still open so that the urban poor could go and get food from there. We learned that if we stop polluting, we can turn back climate change. You know, the whole of Chennai, particularly South Chennai, seemed to explode with colors as the bougainvillea bloomed across the city. And we learned that sometimes out of a bad thing, a very good thing can emerge. You know, we were often being told that, hey, you guys live in pretty unhygienic conditions, but I strongly believe that it's our one big largest shield against the COVID-19 has been our intrinsic immunity, and that has worked for us. We also learned that we need to work together to avoid duplications and omissions in efforts. Let me give you a quick example of this. When I was delivering food packets to the homeless in my area, I found that there were at least 5 others who were delivering food packets in the same area. Now, but they were homeless living on the streets of North Chennai, who were not getting any food at all. And this was a replication of what happened in the year 2015. So we also learned that we can quickly forget the lessons that we have learned. And therefore, there is a critical need here to institutionalize our learnings. Finally, we learned that the urban food systems can build a city resilience and make Chennai a climate smart city. So we are launching, together with the Greater Chennai Corporation and many other government departments, and with resident welfare associations, the Chennai Urban Horticulture and Rooftop Gardening Initiative. We plan to launch this early in 2021. And this is, again, a classic resilience initiative because it offers so many benefits. We are talking about water conservation, we're talking about livelihood generation and skill development for the urban poor, we're talking about reducing urban heat, we're talking about shining the torch on green energy, increasing nutrition and food security, creating public awareness about our city, about the need to segregate waste, which is, as you know, a huge thrust now for the city. So a whole host of benefits coming out of just that one initiative. And what we plan to do is build Pachamari totems on the rooftops and Makkal totems in community spaces on the ground. And our 2030 goal is to influence 2.5 million citizens by driving adoption in specific segments. Using a phase approach. So we're looking at government corporation schools, we're looking at Anganwadis, we're looking at private schools, we're looking at the corporate sector, we're looking at localities in wards, particularly in middle income and upper middle income segments. We had a terrific campaign going out to resident welfare associations. So we're hoping all of this would come together to give us a truly resilient initiative. That really brings me to my last slide. And I want to tell you, before I end, a story of resilience that came from the streets of Chennai. While I was handing out food packets pretty early in the lockdown, I met an old man who lives under the flyover in Chennai, in Adyar. And I handed him over a food packet, and I saw him looking at the rest of the food packets in my car. So I asked him, would you like to have another packet? And his answer to me took my breath away. He said, I know you're at the beginning of your round, and there are many others that you have to give these food packets to. So if anything is left over after you're done, and if you're coming back here, then please hand over a food packet to me. So to me, this is the essence of building resilience in our city, because like Jayashree said, and many others have said, this is about the city coming together. This is about citizens coming together and taking a lesson out of this one man's story to say, I will use only what I really need, to say, I will care about others, to look at life optimistically, to keep cynicism at bay, to look at the good in people, to look at the good in yourself, to see the bigger picture, and also to realize that the small details do count. So I believe that this building in a city, with the citizens, and then go on to the many wonderful initiatives that the city has already started. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Krish. I think it's really nice to start this on a very optimistic note. And I really like how you started off by talking about some of the engineering interventions that we've undertaken in the city, and then moved on to talk about essentially the social architecture that we put together in order to be able to handle these disasters. And in many cases, we are working in partnership, NGOs with corporates, with the government. So in some sense underscores how this is a multifaceted problem, in terms of resolution. But thank you very much. Now, if you have questions for Krish or for any other speaker, there is a Q&A tab that's sort of near the chat window. So I do encourage you to put your questions in there, and you can put them in right away. We'll get to the Q&A at the end, but you don't have to hold them in your head. If you have something interesting that you want to ask Krish, put them in there, and we'll get to them soon enough. All right. I'd like to now introduce our next speaker, Mr. Saravanan Paneerselvam, who's the general manager at Grundfos for the INDO region. Now, Mr. Saravanan has been with Grundfos for more than 20 years. He joined them in 1998. In 2012, very interestingly, he spent a few years in Africa setting up Grundfos Ghana. So he has a perspective of India as well as of Africa, which I think is a very valuable perspective to have. But then in 2015, has come back to India to strengthen the organization as a sales director with the full responsibility of the whole sales organization in the company. Now, and of course, prior to Grundfos, he's also worked in Saudi Arabia as well. So he has a large amount of international, experience, as well as a lot of experience in Chennai. And of course, Grundfos is an organization that has supported Chennai in its sustainability and resilience endeavors for several years. So, Mr. Saravanan, over to you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Ashwin. I think you are able to hear me well.
Yeah, perfectly. Go ahead.
All right, perfect. Thank you for a nice introduction. I mean, you have mentioned it straight away that I have worked in Saudi Arabia and Africa and also Chennai. The relationship is all water-starved countries and cities. All right. Okay. In fact, if you really look at Chennai, I mean, interestingly, as you have mentioned earlier, and also Krish has mentioned very clearly, that Chennai is actually in between two extremes. Sometimes we face floods, and sometimes we face drought. Most often, and sometimes when we really look into why are we getting into these extremes? Is it that are we not getting enough rains? Are we not having enough storages? Or are we not able to manage the water when it comes down excessively? So that is something which we really need to look into. If you look into the statistics, Tamil Nadu has got 3% of country's water resources. All right, and we have 34 river basins, and Tamil Nadu still has got almost about 64% of the land being prone for drought. So, and also, if you really look at per capita availability of water in the state is 1/3 of the national level, which is approximately 750 cubic meters per annum, as against 2,100 in the country. Okay. Now, getting back to the day zeros and the flood situations, we all knew that what kind of situation we were in the middle of 2019 in Chennai. I mean, I've been born and brought up in Chennai, and of course, I did spend some time outside, but then most of my life was has been in Chennai. And what we have seen in 2019 is completely unprecedented kind of drought, and we were very close to the day zero. And what is more interesting about it is that just about 2 years earlier, 2016, we had some very good rains, floods, and 2015 also we had severe floods. And in 2019, also in 2018, partially we were facing drought, a very severe drought. So it clearly says that it is not the issue of having water, but it's basically an issue of management of water. Okay. And when it comes to management, who's responsible for it? Is it the government? Is it the business houses? Is it the NGOs? Or is it the individuals? It's a collective effort. And till the time we realize that it is not anybody's responsibility, but it is everybody's responsibility, this situation is not going to change. Either it is the excess amount of water that we are facing, or there is no water, right? Both are actually in the hands of the individuals, and then grows up the order. Of course, the government is doing a great bit of it. And we are now watching a lot of work that are being handled in terms of what is that? Flood controls and also the water bodies rejuvenations. In fact, Grundfos, and also apart from joining hands with other corporates, trying to get into the restoration of lakes and other water bodies very well. And just for another example, if you